to go? Great, good. Welcome to the September 15th, 2015 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. We'll ask our Town Administrator, David Williams, to read the agenda, please, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll add topics not reasonably anticipated by the Chair 48 hours in advance, and then we'll have a public comment period, and then announcements, gifts, and proclamations. We have a consideration of CM&D room dedication for Jerry Blank, former employee, then a recognition of September as Emergency Preparedness Month, and then a borrowing of bond anticipation note regarding a short-term note for capital items, and then a tax classification hearing with the assessor, and then we'll have Dover Sherborn Cable TV in for a discussion about the cable TV, and then a Pine Hill Cemetery operations discussion regarding the access road between the cemetery and the school, and then financial items with the town finance director, town administrator, and then selectmen reports. There's an item for Sean Colleen for Chapter 90 funds, and then the meeting calendar, set the next meeting, consideration of minutes, and consideration of warrant.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody have anything to add to that agenda? We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Well, we did have one, excuse me, there was emails about changing the order.
Changing the order. Okay.
No, there's one item that
Cemetery
needs to be
Commission
taken at
has to be-
6:15.
We can move the cemetery operations up to 6:15.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the bond anticipation note needs to be done at 6:15. That's,
Well, I'm just asking Sean what he's proposing.
sorry.
I'm not really I thought they had proposed. Maybe you'll want to hear from Sue Tyler. I thought they had asked that they be early because they had a conflicting meeting.
Excuse me, Susan Tyler. I had asked yesterday when I responded to an email from Friday afternoon that I already have a prior engagement at 6:30. Our chairperson for the Cemetery Commission has a prior engagement at 7, which means she has to leave here prior to 7. I had requested that this be done at another meeting where we can all...
So we're doing it at this meeting, but we can accelerate it, I guess, is the question. So
Well,
what has to be done first, David?
We had a prior request for the borrowing to be done to meet another schedule. So Heather, the treasurer, is here, and Carol Marple, the town clerk, are here. So they were requesting it to be at 6:15.
Well, I bet we could get that done and then go on to the Pine Hill operations.
Well, I have a general objection to the Pine Hill operations being on the agenda. It's outside the scope of the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, do we have a second on the agenda?
What are we seconding?
Well, we need a motion to approve. I thought you moved to approve with those changes, or?
I
We have
do.
a motion to
I'll
approve?
second.
Okay, any further discussion? We have an objection from Paul. All in favor of the agenda? Aye. Okay, opposed? Okay, great. We're off to the races. Public comment, Carol, do you want to do public comment?
Yes, please. I'll keep it very short.
That'd be great, thank you.
I just wanted to bring you all up to date. Today I sent to the Attorney General the certification that I have posted and published the zoning articles under Form 299 that I previously told you about. So I'm happy to say the timeline has now expired. I have returned the articles to the Attorney General, and their clock now starts again for those zoning articles. They had indicated that since there were no claims due to defect, that they would move forward and approve them. But we have to wait for that formal approval. And also it means as of today, the general bylaws that were changed at town meeting are now in effect. So that's kind of a big deal. The second thing so that's my town clerk hat. The second thing, I wear my Pilgrim Church moderator hat. And I wanted to express my surprise that at your last meeting you voted to close in the middle Sanger Street on a trial period, and I've already talked to poor Sean about this. But I was surprised that you did that without talking to any of the stakeholders. that have either parking lots or egress on Sanger Street, or the Salwin Street residents who are going to reap the whirlwind from having that closed in the middle. So and I wonder if in those 2 weeks you've talked to them yet?
Okay, and what's the third thing?
And the third thing, I wear my citizen hat as a parent who has a child buried at Pine Hill. I'm kind of, and I have to leave, so I won't be here for if you actually go ahead and discuss this, but I am concerned to learn that there is a possibility that the path that's been designated as a walking route for children in the case of an emergency, should they need to leave Pine Hill School and be walked down to the fire station, that that might be open to vehicle traffic. And so I actually went up to the cemetery today, as I often do, and walked that path just to see what all the hoo-ha's about. And I hope you leave it as the Cemetery Commission has left it. Thank you very much.
That's great, thank you. Let's do the bond. Put the borrowing while Carol's here and Heather. So that's item 3 on our agenda.
Heather Peck, Town Treasurer. As I mentioned to you at your last meeting, that I would be coming forward before you at this meeting to request that you sign a bond anticipation note in the amount of $980,000. $900,000 of that is related to annual town meeting 2014 Article 8.1 for the new fire ladder truck, and $80,000 of that is related to annual town meeting Article 2015. Annual town meeting 2015 Article 7.7, which were Pine Hill School improvements. The amount authorized was $198,250, but only $80,000 of the project has been completed. But I thought it prudent to borrow that money at the same time we're borrowing the ladder truck, since those bills will be coming due any time the work was done in August. So you have in front of you, I believe, 3 documents to sign and a vote to take to approve that borrowing. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think we went through a lot of this at the last meeting.
Okay, anybody have any questions, comments? Paul?
Move approval.
Move approval. Okay, do we have a second on
Second?
the bond anticipation? Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd just note that the agenda item looks like it's a carryover from a prior one. I assume that doesn't matter on the fact sheet.
The fact sheet.
Yeah, it refers to a state anticipation.
That's in the fact sheet. But
Yeah, so that's
yeah, the agenda
effect.
item is bond
Right.
anticipation notes. So yeah, that's just more of a typo on the cover sheet,
Right.
David and Diane to note that. Okay, any further discussion on the note? Hearing none, we have a move and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Carol, you're watching? Okay.
Sure am.
And now, what do we have to do here? We have
Okay,
to-
so the Eastern Bank representative, who quite frankly is hero in my book these days,
Okay.
the
Sign these.
selectmen sign at the blue.
Yeah, great. Oh, boy, color-coded this time.
She
This
did.
is perfect. Here's your pen. It's a real pen, that's a pencil pen?
that's a pen.
Sweet. Thank you. Mine's red, and I don't think you want red ink on a bond on it.
Ready to page.
It's enough red ink on it already.
That's what I mean. Okay, and 3 things?
Did you see?
Thanks, Chuck.
Careful, please.
That's a good reminder.
That might be the phone, get that, will you?
It's for you, Susan.
Do you need 3 or do you want all 5?
I mean, well,
We can just pass it back down.
yeah, I'll carry it.
Don't you want these guys on the hook too, Paul? Come on.
Truthfully, we need 3, but if I can get 5, I'm happy to get 5.
They should. They
All
on?
right, great.
What is this one?
Thanks for getting this all
I
set
don't
up.
deal
Yeah,
leave
no
right
problem.
now. I don't deal leave right now.
All right.
Thank you.
George,
I
yes,
was just informed my lights are on, I'm going out, so that I can leave this place without a dead battery.
but if the battery dies, you can stick around for the hearing.
Oh, thanks.
All right, well, so we'll take George's item next, and then when you come back, we'll
Yep.
jump to yours. Great, good.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay, so George Fisk, this is consideration of a CM&D room dedication, and you're identified as the proponent on this. Do you want to say a few words, George?
Thank you very much for letting me visit with the selectmen this evening.
Our new layout. You like
Yeah,
that?
I know, this is very exciting. It's great. I actually have 3 items, but I'm only going to really be focusing on one, the one
Okay.
that I have permission to speak about. I am speaking as president of the Sherborn Historical Society, and we were approached quite some time ago by one of our members and a long-term resident of Sherborn to see how we felt and others might feel about recognizing a long-term employee of the town, and who also was a longtime resident of the town. And his name is Charles Blank. I think it's Charles A. Blank, but he's known as Jerry. Jerry, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but I've known Jerry for many, many, many years. He started out working for the town in what was a much more formally organized tree department once upon a time. And I think that was probably as far back as the 1950s, but certainly the 60s. And then his job evolved into working for the Sherborn Highway Department, now known as CM&D. And Jerry was a hardworking, likable fellow, very well liked by his cohorts in the department. Did a lot for the town, was an interesting character to say the least, was also notable, among other things, for taking loads and loads and loads of photographs of various activities and things that occurred in Sherborn over a number of years, many of which were now the Historical Society is the recipient of, and some of which have been get hung around the halls every once in a while here. I have spoken, as was suggested, and I thought made sense, with a number of people, most notably employees in CM&D who knew Jerry. I also spoke to Ed as head of the department, and I spoke with David. And the suggestion was, and it makes all kinds of sense, that if we would like to do something to recognize him, that we ought to present that to the selectmen. So our request is for you to consider allowing us to name, having the town name the meeting room at CM&D Highway Department in his memory. And we would hope to probably have a photograph of Jerry hung there, but certainly a plaque, a bronze plaque that we would be, the Historical Society would be responsible for developing and paying for and seeing that it's installed. So that's my request, and I'm happy to try to answer questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions up here?
Have we ever done this before?
Named a room at the Highway Department for anybody
No,
not,
not the highway department, just in,
mean anywhere?
yeah, in Sherborn.
Transfer station,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right, the transfer station
another notable character.
for another notable
Set of
character.
jokes, Happy Wayne.
We have plaques for buildings that have been built. Fire
Yeah, but we
station,
didn't name the fire station, we just recognized the building committee and the selectmen.
Correct, and same here in this building, with plaques.
The sorts of things, Mark, that I've seen have been sort of typical around town where naming has been done is with trees. A number of trees have been planted around town over a number of years, and I think, Carol, it might have been your predecessor, maybe you, but I think it was your predecessor where we began to try to keep track of all these named trees. So the town clerk does have a listing of those kinds of dedications that have been done over the years, but the reason simply for naming a room was it seemed like an opportune thing to do. Jerry it seemed to fit the bill for him, and we thought it was an appropriate way to do it, but I really hadn't thought, I have to confess, about how many other buildings, rooms, whatever had been named for in recognition or in honor or memory of somebody.
There was a library, but we tore it down. Last name Douse.
Yes,
Isn't there going to be a room in the new library named for Nora?
yes.
I didn't hear what you just said.
Pardon?
There is a new room being proposed for naming rights over at the library for Nora.
Oh, I was thinking of the one for Dave Sawyer.
There's a few. We also have Fessenden Field, which was named after a resident in that area. We have Laurel Farms, it was named, Laurel Fields, it was named after a family member. So,
Jameson Field.
Jameson Field,
During walking trails.
we have,
Guess the answer is
How am I
yes.
doing?
It's good to have friends.
I was asking what room did you have in mind? That wasn't clear to me.
It's the meeting room.
Which room?
The meeting room. There's a meeting room there.
Okay. Anything else? Do we have a motion?
Move approval to grant permission to the Historic Society to work with the CME director on naming the meeting room as dedicated to Jerry Blank.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye, 5-0. Thank you, George.
That's great. Two other things briefly.
Okay, we are on like a time constraint, but sure.
Only to tell you that I'm coming back to see you again. I think it's on the 1st. And I'm coming to be speaking to you as president of the Rural Land Foundation.
Okay.
There is a property that we've acquired property from the Humphrey family, and we've also sold a portion of that, as was the plan, to a local resident, with the stipulation that we attempt to put a conservation restriction on a portion of that. So what I'm going to be leaving with you next week, when I'm going to be away for a few days, is a draft language of the conservation restriction, and I can also show you a plan of the property that you certainly should want to look at between now and when I come back again. The other is that there is a large tract of land. It was actually the first acquisition we had from the Hildreth family. We own a 50-acre parcel on the corner of Western Avenue and Pleasant Street, and we are negotiating with somebody for them to buy that from us. And what we would like to do, and part of the arrangement would be that we would like to place on that a agricultural preservation restriction. And so the language of that, I will draft language of that, I'll leave as well with the Selectmen's office. Just so
and we'll
you...
pick this up the next hearing?
Yes.
Great. Thanks,
That's
George.
it.
Excellent. Okay, if we could, let's jump ahead while we have Susan and Chucky here to the discussion of the Pine Hill Cemetery operations, Pine Hill Emergency Access Road. Sean, I'm going to let you lead the discussion on this. You were David. I think this was instigated by your item, right?
It was. And to narrow the focus from where it may end up and where it's been, there's always been an access road to the back of the Pine Hill School. It's never been gated. It's always been passable. It's been used in recent past as an emergency evacuation route in the snow. That has happened. It's vitally important to the safety of the 450 odd people that are at that school that road remain passable. And we can call it a road, we can call it a cart path, you can call it a trail through the woods. It has to be passable. Passable means plowable in the winter. Through some different construction activities that have happened in the cemetery, the road at the cemetery end has kind of hopscotched in different locations. It's always remained the same at Pine Hill School. Over the past few months, there was some effort made on the town's end to reconnect what was already the road, and it didn't move. It basically just changed in elevation because the cemetery has moved somewhat like 1,000 feet closer to the school than it used to be. It's been cleared, blasted, and modified. So that road has now been reconstructed to the satisfaction, I think, of the Public Safety Committee, and then there was a gate put up. which now impedes the access. The issue we want to discuss right now is whether or not there should be a gate. And I'm not asking whether or not we should vote. Possibly we should. We may just want to ask the Cemetery Commission on this short time span, could we appeal to them to just take the gate down for right now? There's never been a gate there, ever. The road has existed probably as long as anyone's been living in this room. It's a shame Elliot Taylor can't be here, because I know for a fact he stood in this room and spoken of the roads that are up there. It is a fire access road that existed into town forest and through the back of the cemetery for probably 100 years. Those are pretty much all facts. There are also, we should make notable mention that within the past year, there was what was perceived as an alleged active shooter in the woods. And I'd like to hand it off to the police chief or his staff to go through the scenario of what happens when there's an emergency in the back of that school and the access to it.
And in fairness to Susan, I would like to at least let her have her 2 cents before she has to run out of here. That's
Okay.
Thank you. If I may, I just printed these off downstairs. This is the newest rendition. Apparently, 6 years ago, there was an enlargement project approved by the Cemetery Commission prior to my time. This is the newest rendition of the layout of the lots that has been done by Topographics, who was hired by the Cemetery Commission 3 years ago. This is, again, this was the outline, the concept has not changed for this. The only thing that's changed is the layout of the lots, the numbering of the lots. Everybody else, I don't want to...
Can you orient us to this?
I certainly can. Pardon my backside here, guys.
I take it we're
This
coming up
map
from the
here,
playground here, so
if you're looking, if you
the
take
north
it,
arrow's bottom left.
if you take it horizontally here,
Okay.
this is the main road in,
Gotcha.
coming into the road. This section here, the cemetery, was created in 1852. We have people that are buried in this section. The original reverends of the town are buried in this section. I have burials in this section that go back to the late 1700s that were moved from central downtown up to the cemetery when it opened again in 1852. The Cemetery Commission, again, right in my time, 6 years ago, if you look to the left of this, they created this new enlargement area. Now, it's a huge issue with the state. There's articles in the Boston Globe as recent as a year ago where towns are scrambling. We have to provide burial places for residents of the town. So 6 years ago, the Cemetery Commission started this enlargement project to the left. Now, if you look on the map, so the main road is coming in, again from your bottom. It splits at the fork, one way in, you come in, and if you go all the way to the end, that left road to the back of the new section, you'll see that at the if you continue on straight, you're going into burial areas, all back in here. We're running out of full burial space in the front section because of the amount of ledge that is in there. So in the back, and the work that was done this year was to continue here, removing the ledge and creating more full burial space. And the plan, as you can see on this, was that this road continues down straight, which it has been since I got on the commission. It was already there. It takes this right, and then, again, you can see there was an old car path that came up through here, but this is valuable full burial space that needs to be provided. So this road comes here, and it goes here. Now, I'm sorry, I don't have time. If we can please have another meeting, I can show you photos where the CMD department plowed that. They were able to get snow plows down there as recent as March 3rd. Get it right down there, come down, go over, and go down. And certainly since March 3rd, that area is far improved from what it had been. And the Cemetery Commission is providing for full burials. And every bit of work is on town property.
So I think the issue that Sean raised to put on the agenda just quickly was with that's helpful info, it's just the barrier across the road.
The barrier across the gate, again, if you refer back to the map, the work that was being done here that started in June. We were noticing that cars were driving all out and back here. We've got active equipment and work going on. In front of this final thing, which is the Daramo, if you go up there, you have Rico Daramo and his family lot. Right there we put cones in the road as a sign, please people, don't drive out here. There is a burial, there is a lot right here. There are people buried here. Cars were going around the road and the cone and driving across a active burial lot. So we put 2 cones there. I mean, two sections of curbing to stop people from driving across somebody's burial place. Even with that in place, because I'm up there almost every day researching cleaning stones and being aware of what's going on, I can walk out the back and see cars have driven around the grass, all here. I've got donuts spun around, and if you follow the tire tracks, they're all coming up and down from the school. That's why the gate went up.
How did they get through the gate that's at the Pine Hill end of that
Because
road?
it hadn't been up all summer long.
And now it's up.
I don't know that, I haven't been down to the school.
Okay. But if it's up, does the commission maybe check the answers? Does
It's
the
also
commission have
important to
objections?
know that the gate that's up there is not locked. It's a turnbuckle. Anybody can get out of their car and open it. They don't need a key or anything. We've made it accessible. We've also made it narrow enough so that people can walk around it and horses can walk around it. You go up there, we were up there on Saturday and there's horse prints all over the place. So that we've left space beside the gate for the kids to easily walk around it, even double file. And we purposely didn't make it, you know, blocking the whole thing. And as I said, it's got a turnbuckle. Anybody can go up there and open it. There's no lock on it.
Is there a gate at the front?
Are you yelling? I'm sorry.
No, he's not, no.
God, you scared me.
Is there a gate at the front? To
Yes.
the entrance to the cemetery?
Yes.
Is there a gate?
Yes,
Do you close it?
we could.
But do you?
No, we don't, but we could.
So is there anything restricting people from driving up the main entrance and doing donuts on the lawn in the back of the parking lot?
No,
No.
they haven't in 140 years.
But
they
they're
haven't.
going through Pine Hill?
No, they're coming up from the school. That's what Sue just said.
That's a fact, huh?
Yeah. Now, she has pictures. She's a picture taker.
But hold on. If that's been happening this summer
And last summer, too.
and last summer,
I don't
there's
know
never
about-
ever been a gate in existence there. There's never been one. That fire access road has never had a gate. So you're alleging that there's something different now.
It's never been
Now
used
it's
for traffic. It's paved.
What?
It's paved. They paved it 15 feet wide.
It's not paved.
Yes, it is.
And tractor trailers were going up that road in 2006 when it was clear.
It is paved now.
It's not paved.
Okay.
Excuse me,
Honestly, it's
if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
again, Susan Tyler. I have a prior engagement.
Yes.
The chairman of the commission has a prior engagement. We only found out about this on Friday. I am more than willing to and prepared to go over this and show you any photo and any documentation that I know of since my time on the cemetery commission. But we don't have a chance to do it now. We did not have a chance to post a meeting within the 48-hour guidelines of the open meeting law, nor are we in Chucky, Mrs. Blaney here is the chairperson, while we are a quorum and we can make a decision, we cannot legally make a decision because we do not have a posted meeting for
I
tonight.
don't think you can make a decision tonight.
No, exactly, and that's what I'm saying. So I am requesting again, as I did yesterday in an email, can we possibly put this on for a future agenda so that all the townspeople can see what is going on, what the issue is, and certainly the fire department, the police department, and let's please all get together and work this out with without the innuendos of, well, she said this and she said that, and I think this is what happened. Let's get it all on the table and work with it as grown-ups. We can't legally make a decision tonight.
And I'm going to say one of our frustrations is that there's a lot of misinformation going around in the town, and nobody's had the courtesy ever to call us up and say, is that true? Public safety had things at their meeting that weren't true.
Mr. Chairman?
We got
Hold
a
on.
really nice letter from
You've
Rick
been in
Thompson
public
with
safety.
information that he had been told.
We can't.
Well, I've had my hand up for a while here.
Back and forth.
Mr. Chairman?
I think if we're going to put this on for a future agenda, we should also let the police chief and the fire chief, if he wants to, speak, because this came up through
Of course.
a public safety
absolutely,
issue. So, I mean,
absolutely.
having heard from you tonight, we've already established no decisions can be made. I think it'd at least be helpful to air what might have prompted this, and then we'll get to Paul's question or comment too.
I'm agreeing that there ought to be a postponement. I've asked for it myself because I found out about this yesterday for the first time.
What does the board want to do? Does the board want to postpone this discussion or have further discussion?
Well, that discussion.
I would like to postpone it, but postpone it far enough so we could ask these folks to please get together and see if they can figure out a mutually agreeable solution.
That's what I've suggested, that there be some offline meetings.
I agree with that, Mark.
Because we don't, to have a selectmen's meeting where people are throwing things against each other and so on is just not right. Let's work this thing out. There's solutions. There are reasonable people on every side. I feel like I need a hell of a lot more time to, I'd like to actually go look at the road. You actually sent an email today asking people to go look at the road.
I did as well.
But I didn't have a chance to look at the road.
It's helpful.
I'm
There's a lot
working
of,
up there tomorrow, please. Anybody that wants to come up there, come and see it.
And it's just basic courtesy to a committee of the town.
There's a lot of interest here, Paul. I agree with you, but there also are a lot of interests. It goes beyond just the cemetery commission. Our public safety officers have an interest. The traffic safety committee or the public safety committee had an interest.
Traffic safety is limited. Excuse me, I'm on traffic safety. We've never discussed
Public
this.
safety.
Mike, we
Rick?
heard some of this before. We
Yeah,
called
please.
a meeting
I just
with them.
really, I'm pulling my hair over this. It's
Hold on, wait.
painful.
I'm dying to hear from the chief, but I need to just point something out, because people are going to start running out of here because they obviously have prior commitments.
Yeah.
This is not a new topic. What's new is right now, the children are going to go to school, and there's a lock gate.
It isn't locked.
Somebody in here should have the authority to say, you know what, let's discuss this for the next 6 months, but take the gate down.
It
So if
isn't
a cruiser needs to
locked.
make it through there, if you need tools to get out and open a gate, it's locked.
It's not
I can do it with my arthritic hand.
Listen, there doesn't need to be a gate there right now. Someone in this room has the authority to say, take the gate down and we'll discuss it. It's a new gate, it's never existed.
We don't have the authority.
Yeah,
This is today, 2 o'clock on your other end of your
There's a
emergency.
police chief, there's a fire chief, there's public safety
Yes,
officials
yes,
here.
yes,
They
yes.
certainly have the authority to say you have
2
no right
o'clock
to lock
today.
that gate.
It's not locked.
2 o'clock today.
That's not the gate that was up there.
That's the gate
Steel
that's on
gate.
the emergency access road that the town paid money to build 3 years ago. It's got 2 gates and 2
Yeah, we're
locks
not
on it.
talking about that. You're being ridiculous. There's a steel cable that needs tools to get open.
I
and no
opened
loops.
it today with my arthritic thumbs, for God's
This
sake,
is
and we don't have
exactly
a
what I
lock
want to
on it.
avoid by asking for more
I
time.
think it's I think it's healthy to at least get the issue out there. Though.
There's a
I
lock
think
on
I'd
the
like to
town
go up there
gate.
and have you
Not
guys
my
all
gate.
come up with us and look at it together.
With respect, I was up there an hour ago and seen.
I think. Hang on a second. I think we do. The chief was called on and he hasn't been allowed to speak yet, so let's
Oh, okay.
let him speak.
Just real briefly, I don't even know how to take the comments. I don't even know how to take the comments that I've even heard walking up here. I had a comment from a town official saying that the school wasn't involved in these conversations. That's absolutely not true. We've had public safety meetings to include Barbara Brown from the school, the principal. We've had adult decisions. There was a comment made about people acting like children. We've had adult communications about this between the Public Safety Committee and the Cemetery Commission. In fact, when this became an issue, I'm the one that approached Susan Tyler, and I invited her to a public safety meeting to have an adult decision about this because there was misinformation being spread within the town. And I thought, as of July 15th, during our last meeting, which was held here, that all of that nonsense had been addressed until we realized that there was a gate and in a chain that was erected between the cemetery and the school. So we did have communications. I don't want the general public to believe that one side is pitted against the other. I made it very clear in an email and a letter to the Cemetery Commission that we should be working on this collaboratively.
When we
So-
got your letter, we called a joint meeting, and you guys all came to it. As a cemetery.
Can we, again, please postpone this to another date when we have all parties available, all parties prepared, all documents prepared, and have an intelligent conversation instead of this obviously very heated conversation, because everybody's got some place to be tonight, and this was added in at the last moment. Again, I respectfully, we cannot make a decision tonight, the Cemetery Commission. There are now 3 of us here, Jean Ham, Chucky, Blaney, and myself, Susan Tyler. We are not posted. We cannot make a decision. So
I think
we can't go
that's been
forward.
established.
I move that we postpone.
Well, we got a motion.
Second.
Second?
You got any further discussion? I've got something to say, which is I would rather not even ever take this up again. I don't think it's our issue. I don't think it's our issue. I actually think it's something our public safety officials and the Cemetery Commission ought to be able to talk about and work out. There's a cable across the road. I've seen it with my own eyes. Whether Susan can open it with her hands or whether Rick would have to run it over with a police car, I can't figure that out. But getting the access to where the students are and getting the students evacuated if they need to be evacuated is a public safety issue, and protecting our cemetery from damage is a Cemetery Commission issue, and those two bodies ought to be able to work this out without us having to, oversee it, and I don't even think we have authority to oversee a lot of this either.
I wanted to make that point. When I went, it sure looks like I saw the chain, and it looks like it's on cemetery property, so I question our jurisdiction as well. But I can't imagine that you all can't resolve this.
But we do have a bully pulpit, for what it's worth, to point out if there's public safety issues, and we also have our public safety agencies, which we do work with, and which have raised this to our attention, raised it to Selectman Colleen's attention. And he's obviously looked into this issue a lot too. So I'm hoping you can work this out.
Oh, absolutely, and we have been trying to work on it. And again, I personally, I am not against the safety of the children at the school. Yes, I don't have children at the school. But I am also most heartily concerned with the safety of the patrons that come to the cemetery, or the patrons that are already there. You have historic stones that cannot be replaced that are within a foot of the roadways. I was up there today putting flowers on some graves that are not attended to, and it's my choice. I choose to do that. And while I was up there, there was at least 3 different vehicles of women that were elderly. They had parked their cars and they were out visiting loved ones. I'm concerned for all the visitors that are up there. There are people up in the cemetery all day long, spring, summer, and fall, tending to those graves. And so not only am I concerned about the safety of the school, absolutely, but I'm concerned for the patrons of the cemetery, be they above or below ground. I have to leave now. Thank you.
Okay. So when is the next meeting, Chucky, of your commission?
Let's pick a
We
date.
call a meeting when
We haven't picked a date.
Do you want to pick it? You want to pick a date in public, and then everybody would know when it is? Anybody who's interested can show up.
Unfortunately, because the meeting was called for 7:15, or this topic was called for 7:15, our chair of public safety, Arthur Fenno, isn't here, and I think it would
Who wants to
be...
go to that? Well, maybe you can work out behind the scenes when a
I've
meeting would
sent
be.
plenty of emails to the Cemetery Commission.
But can I suggest that the Cemetery Commission establish some suggested dates, email the Public Safety Committee, Chairman.
we can do it that Saturday.
I'll send out a bunch of emails tomorrow.
Saturday is...
No,
we
we'll
can
do
we
it
can
during
talk.
the week.
We can talk offline.
Okay, great, good.
Mr. Chairman, I move the question.
Yeah.
There's a motion made and seconded.
We've been discussing. Do we have any further
I didn't
discussion?
get to finish discussing. I just want to make a point that there's a lock gate behind Pine Hill, and you guys made that choice.
There it is.
Let's just remember that.
I
Okay,
was
all
just
right.
up there, because if you said that, I was just up there and I physically opened the gate and closed the gate.
Could I request that an officer follow me up there to show that it is not locked?
Mr. Chairman, I call the question.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're all
This is
talking
gonna
past
go on.
we're talking all past each other.
Yeah.
So,
Please. Can we vote?
Well, the motion is to postpone. Does that mean until further notice?
it hasn't
Until
been.
further notice.
Yeah,
If
we
they
haven't
come
set a
back
time.
and they can't resolve it, then
We can.
we still don't have
Then we can
jurisdiction.
spin in circles. Okay. All right. All in favor of postponing it? Great. Yeah, good. Everybody got their points made. I don't know how it's not locked if you have to get out of the vehicle to open it, though. That's the thing. So, I don't understand.
It's not the same gate that was up there Friday when Skip tried to open it. Couldn't open.
Okay, all right, good. Well, then that's progress. We have a tax classification hearing, which is 11 minutes late. So can we hear from our assessors on the tax classification hearing?
I can. I'd like
Great,
to
thank you.
introduce myself first. My name is Wendy Alassi, and I'm the new-ish Director of Assessing. Hello. I haven't had a chance to really meet any of you, so. And this is our board member, Ken McDonough.
Oh, you guys know me.
So it's going to be no yelling?
No.
No, I promise.
Oh, my God.
Maybe the next one, but not this one for sure. And I think Irene was going to
We
come
may
in
have to supply that in,
and sit with us. No, that's whichever. So this might be easy, considering, you know, the cemetery issue. This might be okay.
Sorry, I
So,
apologize.
no problem. So my name again is Wendy Alassi, and I'm here to go over the tax classification, and it's simply to decide whether you want to shift the tax rate or shift some of the burden onto the commercial property owners, or if you want to keep it as historically a single tax rate, and there won't be additional burden on commercial properties. So you all have the handout, and here we have the 4 classes of property, and in addition to real, commercial, industrial, we also have personal property for fiscal 2016, and it's up to you to decide if you want to adopt a residential factor, and the residential factor is used to determine the percentage of the tax levy that's applied to each class of real and personal property. The Board of Assessors then applies these percentages to individual property classes. It is our responsibility as the assessors to provide you, the selectmen, with relevant information and discuss the effects of having a split rate or a single rate. The Board of Assessors must determine first and classify each property of real and personal property. So we have to identify each of the parcels in town, whether they're residential, open space, commercial, industrial, or personal property. After doing that, they're each designated a usage code. The highest usage code is residential in Sherborn. It makes up over 95% of the parcels. So this is an interim year. Last year was a revaluation year, and it's a little more rigorous as far as reporting and auditing from the Department of Revenue. We saw an increase in value, and I'm sure that that's not surprising to anybody here because the market's increasing, and so that's caused an increase in values. However, jumping ahead a little bit, the tax rate was $20.32, and this year it's $20 and projected, it's all preliminary, $20.60. Irene and I had discussed the vote on debt exclusion. Had debt exclusion not been voted, which was, $2 million, the tax rate would have actually been $18.83. But because we had to include the debt exclusion that was voted, it increased the tax rate to $20.60.
What was the percentage increase in the valuation this past year?
The percentage increase in valuation was, I believe it was, hold on one second, about a 3%. Oh, in valuation, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was about a little more than 3%. Thank you. And again, this is mass appraisal. So there are certain classes and certain property types that sell, for example, a couple of years ago, the values of antiques had dropped down and the prior assessor had lowered those. So what was hot this year was colonials. That was an increase. And before Yvonne left, she was given a directive by the Department of Revenue, and she was directed to change land and the way that we tax our land. So she took, again, a directive in order to get certified by the Department of Revenue. She changed the excess land to $23,000 a parcel, and it was, I believe, a little bit lower than that. And then in addition, they directed her to combine certain neighborhoods. So you're going to see a change in land values in different neighborhoods as well. We had to, well, not we, she did this before I got there, that certain neighborhoods needed to be combined. We needed to redistrict our neighborhoods, and had that not been done, more likely than not, I would not have received preliminary certification, and we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So it was something that's a directive. They call them recommendations. They're not necessarily a recommendation. It's a directive that needs to be done so that we're uniform and consistent. So
it looks like valuation went up 15 million out of a billion, so about maybe 1.5%.
1.3%.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Okay.
So 1.3%, which is a lot less than 3%.
I apologize. Yes, I was looking
It
at
just
the...
surprises me because I thought the market was more robust over the past year, and I'm just wondering, do you feel that Sherborn is lagging in terms of market increase, or is there assessment overdue for a reevaluation, or
right?
Why are we facing that?
Okay.
And it's in the context of at town meeting we were told that the tax rate was going down, and it was approaching 20, and now the tax rate is much over 20. And I understand there's debt exclusion, but we also see some of these other numbers heading in the wrong direction still. And I'm
right.
wondering what the reason for that is.
Right. Okay. So the Department of Revenue, we have our strict guidelines, and we have to be with the highest class code, which is single family. We have to be within a 10% range. So, for example, if you're at 95% of fair market value, which is about right where we are, then what will happen is if you keep going higher and higher and higher, it opens us up for liability as far as appellate tax board cases. Would have to increase our overlay, because if you're assessing in mass appraisal and you're assessing everybody at 100%, there's going to be properties that, maybe are $50,000 less in value or $95,000 less in value. So we have to keep it within a certain range, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. There's the coefficient of dispersion to make sure that everything is in line. I did read the advisory committee's information, and it's a projection. And again, it's the numbers. Okay.
One of the things that we did not take into consideration when we published that number with advisory committee this year was the debt exclusion that was voted in prior years that was short-term borrow that was going to be added to the tax bill in this year. And that was an oversight. And I do plan, and I have spoken to Mary today, we're going to make sure that that's taken care of in our future years, is not only include in articles, if you vote yes for debt exclusion for this, we're going to add this to your tax rate, but also the new debt exclusion that's going to come on to their tax rate that year.
And so that was what was reported, saying, it may go down. All of the factors I don't think were considered.
But the 1.5%, going back to that 1.5% increase, it still implies that the rate of appreciation in town overall has only been about 1.5%. Is that right?
Overall,
yeah.
Yes. As far as raising the assessments even higher, per se. We have standards that we need to meet. And if you look at our numbers, they're actually very stable. And Ken had an opportunity to look at all of the numbers. And I think that you felt that the COD and the...
the overall accuracy is good. What the assessments have been vis-a-vis what the sale prices have been is within that 5%. DOR wants to see a 10% on the outside. We're around 5%. So that's consistent.
So the indicator is that the town is still lagging in terms of market appreciation. That's
The values now, and I'm not sure if everyone is aware of this, the values are based on 2014 sales. Okay? So in 2014, the assessments are what the market was indicating.
So for 2016, our assessments are based on 2014 numbers?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Does that make a little more sense, or?
A little more sense.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't make sense from a big picture standpoint.
Right.
But what you said makes sense. I understand it.
It sounds like you want your assessment to go up, so that your house is more
everybody
valuable.
else's assessment goes up. The tax rate goes down. That's what I want.
Right. And
That's what you said. Question. So we went up 15 million in overall valuation. How much of that was the change in the land, the way you valued the land?
I don't think I have that.
Right here, it's residential.
That's an artificial.
But it's not.
It is residential, it wasn't in commercial or any of the others.
Right, okay. So we have it's under the residential class.
Right.
And do I have was this last year? Okay. So minus, we had about 7 million in new growth. Okay, so we had about 7 million in new growth, so 15 million, so probably about 8 million in the increase in land. But that's not just because, that's not just because we had to redistrict the neighborhoods or anything like that.
Right. But the new growth includes new
Construction. Exactly.
We had 15 million of growth, of which 7 was new construction.
Yeah.
And the balance was the revaluation of the land?
Well, it's not, what we consider new growth is a structure that was not existing. So for example, if somebody pulls a permit and they remodel and rehab their entire home, that's not new growth. That's additional assessment, but we don't, or the Department of Revenue does not consider that new growth. It's something that is new and affixed is what we consider new growth. And in addition to that, included in the new growth figures, we'll get to that a little bit further, is personal property, new growth, and that's utilities. That's NSTAR, Verizon, and those are all dictated through the Department of Revenue. They're centrally valued assessments.
So I guess what I'm hearing is, though, that the increase, there is no increase due to market.
It's very little. If you
On the
look
base.
at column F on the back, it says 724 to 733 for the average. That's like, what, less than 0.5%.
That's the average tax
So
bill.
then my other question is that, and you mentioned the $18 versus the $20.
$18.83.
That's the total of the debt exclusion going back, or just?
No, had I not,
We added in, that can't be just what we added last year.
No, it's what was added as a total in debt exclusion that we're carrying right now.
Okay.
So it's a tax rate pure without any debt exclusion.
Just to run the place.
Right. And then what is it with the debt exclusion?
yeah.
Thanks.
Right.
Paul?
First, I want to compliment you on getting this tax rate stuff done so early. I work for a lot of towns, and some of them don't get to it till November, December, January. So my hat's off to everybody who's had a hand in putting this together. Thank you. The whole finance department. My second point is that our role here tonight is not to really get into the math about what the tax rate is. Our role is to decide a fairly simple question,
Yeah.
which is, do we want to have a single tax rate or do we want to have a split tax rate?
Right.
And on the issue of the single tax rate, I could say that during the 20-odd years I've been on the board, I've always voted for a single tax rate, and I've done so because of presentations from the assessors to the effect that the town is basically residential. The amount of non-residential is really quite small. It's like 3-4%.
Yeah.
And because that percent is so small, a split tax rate really doesn't work, because you have to load so much onto your businesses to have anything other than pennies of savings for the average taxpayer that it doesn't make much economic sense. And if you look at it from the point of view of, don't we want to have businesses in this town, and if we suddenly go to a split tax rate and start hammering our local businesses, all we're going to do is cause people to give up. And the few businesses that we have won't thrive. I see our role as encouraging businesses here, our business district, and those who have worked so hard, even those that don't live in the town, they provide an important amenity to the town. So I don't see that a split tax rate produces anything, and I see that your recommendation is not to do that.
Yeah, it's a unanimous vote. On page 8, it shows you with the average value under residential and commercial, there's individual scenarios. So if we shift the rate 10%, it reduces the residential bill by $80, and it increases the commercial bill by almost $1,500. So, and then you can keep going down. I did a 10% shift, a 25% shift, and a 50% shift. And I don't think that the savings for residents is significant, and I think that it would really hurt commercial. That's my opinion. I believe it's been the opinion of the board and the Board of Selectmen.
And your report is very persuasive. In fact, I would move to retain the uniform tax rate
Okay.
for fiscal year
Yeah, I think we had a couple
2016.
more comments and
Oh, I was
questions.
trying to cut those off.
So is it legal to turn that lever around and have a lower tax rate for the businesses?
There is what's called a small commercial exemption. I would have to run some scenarios. If you'd like, I could do that. I don't think that it would actually be significant, and it's something that I could certainly look into and maybe create a couple of scenarios and reports. There needs to be a certain number of people working in the company. There needs to be certain, I believe it's like incorporated or LLC. There's all different variables, but it's definitely something that I can look into if you'd like me to.
I brought that up last year.
Oh, yeah?
I presented it to them, and I did get some feedback
Okay.
that it didn't work. So somewhere in
Yeah.
your shop there, you've
Right.
taken a look at that, and it wasn't going to work.
It doesn't work for the businesses that we have today,
Correct.
but could it work for the businesses that we don't have yet?
That's a good
And
question.
maybe make ourselves a little easier to do business with. I mean, it
Those are
wouldn't
all-
be a ton of money,
Those are all
but it
good
might
questions.
be a way to, start to
So would
make it a
shift,
little more competitive.
But I'd suggest to you that that's sort of a longer-term issue, that we need to decide a tax rate today rather than postpone it, so that we can get into the the line at Department of Revenue.
Right.
So we're able to send out tax
Yeah.
bills without,
Mhm.
the tax collector I see is nodding because she's, and the treasurer's nodding because she's going to have to borrow money to cover
Yeah.
because we can't get the tax bills out and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's a good, so last year when I brought it up, I got the same reaction saying, okay, we'll do the work, but would you approve the tax
Right.
rate and then we'll get back to you later.
Yeah, I don't think that it's something that could be done for FY16. If it were to be voted, it would need, about a year.
I suspect that tax rate is not what's keeping businesses out of Sherborn at this point. I think there's enough.
It's not one single
There's
thing.
enough other things,
You know,
right?
there's
So
a
we could-
collection of things.
we
This
could
is
fix
one we
that.
could do something about.
Well,
It sends a bit of a signal. I mean,
It does until you try to
But
get
I don't-
water or sewer service or,
Right.
Well, we'll
or
fix
anything
that
else.
next.
yeah,
Well,
one factor of many.
well, in the meantime, there's stuff on that third, right? Yeah. I thought I did that.
I want to take this opportunity to make a similar comment because probably for several years, but certainly this year, it's been brought up to me several times by people just throwing stuff around. Hey, maybe the answer to our huge tax bills is business. Well, 4% isn't going to save anything. When our business, I think people, and I think the comments here and what they've voted on unanimously is that would acknowledge the fact that the business revenue is very delicate, and playing around with that tax rate could really would just there'd be this knee jerk that the values would drop within a year or two, and you wouldn't gain anything. And it's so minuscule it wouldn't do much. I also would be in favor of looking at a lower tax rate in the future. I certainly wouldn't entertain raising the rate, when half of our buildings are vacant. There's a building that's completely vacant on Route 60, on 27 that, that doesn't scream raise my tax rate.
There are other mechanisms, like this tax incentive financing, where you can entice a business into the town in return for reduced taxes over a period of time.
The tax incremental financing, yeah.
So
yeah.
there are a variety of tools. If we were actively pursuing businesses and trying to get them into town, like one of my towns has a whole committee that goes out and solicits people to bring their business into town, and as part of that they negotiate these tax incremental financing things, so that a business would get a tax break for moving in and taking over an abandoned building.
Right.
But over a period of, let's say, 5 years, the tax will go from like 20% back up to 100%, but they'll have this transition period that'll help them get into the town, get familiar with the town, and get established. So there are tools available that are meaningful, but a split tax rate, as you've said before, this is pennies compared to the other tools that are available to us.
That tool, Paul, is one of the things that the Water and Sewer Committee were talking about in terms of financing infrastructure for the center of the town. And to my way of thinking, until we have the ability to accommodate businesses that want to come into town because we have water and sewer, we're wasting our time talking about taxes. That building, that Shepherdson building that's vacant, I mean, somebody might tell you if the taxes were lower, it wouldn't be vacant. It'd still be vacant. There's limited septic capacity. There's, it's a building that's constrained and it hasn't been occupied. There's another building in the center of town that seems to change tenants every year. That's not because of the taxes. That's because you can't redevelop that property because there's no more septic capacity, no more water capacity. That's our real shortcoming. And it's a bigger question. It's not a single rate question, but I just wanted to react to the idea that we can do something for businesses by lowering taxes. At this point in time, I don't think we can.
Well, I think Chuck made a motion. Could I second it?
Did you make a motion?
Yeah, I moved.
Second? Okay, good.
Did you second it?
Moved and seconded to have a unitary rate. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Hey, thanks for the great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience with me. It's my first presentation.
No, it was very good.
I have the LA5 sheet for you all to sign.
Okay.
Fortunately, we don't need the town clerk to,
We checked, she's available in the morning.
David, you can introduce the next item, the emergency preparedness item, once this is done.
So this is just proof that the notice was in the newspaper.
oh, when you open the hearing, Mike, you needed to read that into the record.
Okay.
Okay.
Mike, you needed to read that into the record as part of
The
the...
notice of the hearing?
Yes.
You can read it.
Falling taxes.
Which notice am I reading, guys?
Oh,
There we go. So the hearing we just held was the Sherborn Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing at Tuesday, September 15th at 6:30 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room at Town Hall, 19 Washington Street. The central issue to be discussed during this tax classification hearing is whether all 5 classes of property, residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal, shall be taxed at the same rate or different rates for fiscal year 2016. Interested taxpayers are urged to attend the hearing. Written and oral statements from interested taxpayers will be accepted and taken into consideration at the hearing. And that was run in the newspaper on 9/8/15. Okay.
Do we need to ask, is there any written or oral presentations?
Yeah, are there any, David, are there any written or oral presentations that you received?
No.
Okay, and nobody out there had any? Okay, great, thank you. Next up.
just need your signatures.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Well, those are the kinds of things you're supposed to tell me before the hearing.
Sorry.
And I just wanted to point out
He kicked
that
me, I just didn't kick you.
we did not raise the levy to the max, so there's still an additional $282,000. That's any.
Yes,
Town
that's
meeting to
helpful.
appropriate that.
What you're saying is you didn't tax as much as you could have
Exactly.
under the law.
That was a deliberate decision by the advisory committee and town meeting and this board. We all partnered on trying to save.
Can you explain that to me? Well, I don't understand.
So there's a certain amount
Forward policy.
of taxes that we can raise and collect.
Yep.
And
Without an override.
we are $282,000 lower than what we could have collected.
That's
The
the
2.5 is the limit, right?
That's
Yes,
the
per year.
total levy limit that you could raise it was about
Right.
524,000.
2.5 with adjustments, and
Right,
so we basically have 282,000 a buffer before we hit that cap.
exactly, yeah.
So that means next year you could raise it up to the 2.5 plus the 2.8.
Ross, if
And it's
you
just for you to squeeze your
But
signature.
the point was, we didn't spend all we could have spent. We were all disciplined, we were all very frugal. We could have spent more, the tax rate could have been higher. We all chose not to, thanks to the leadership of
Hoping the fire chief
advisory-
charges for rides on that new fire engine. We won't sign up.
Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Good.
Nice meeting
Okay.
you all.
Nice meeting you. Chief, you're the one who's going to talk about emergency preparedness now? Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. September is National Emergency Preparedness Month. Designated by Homeland Security. It's been this for a number of years now. And unfortunately, on a beautiful fall day that reached the 80s and not a cloud in the sky today, this is the time of year that you got to start planning and thinking about the white stuff, and the wind, and the rain, and the ice, and that comes with it. That's pretty much why they picked September, is so that you, of course for us in New England, winter weather tends to be worse than our summer weather. We dodged most of the hurricanes, but we always seem to be in the bullseye for the nor'easters. And that's where the trees come down and the wires come down. So it's why it's very important that everybody at home has some type of a plan for when the power goes out. Whether it is you have a generator, whether it is you have a automatic generator like we have here in the town buildings that comes on automatically. Do you have a kit with water and non-perishable food items, maybe a gas stove that you're able to cook on a patio for a couple of days, clean clothes. place to go maybe, and relatives, friends in another community if Sherborn's your streets hit kind of hard by a single storm, that you can go somewhere. It's all of this, and it's all pre-planning that the government, that the state, right down to the local level here, that we encourage people to think about now over the course of the next few days and the next few weeks before we do ramp into the winter weather season. Areas that we've even talked about locally is just making sure your properties are pruned. We do live in a rural community here, and we do all have trees. Make sure they're trimmed back. Make sure they're away from power lines. You don't want your lines to come down on your house and be out for a few days. Making sure that if you have big hanging branches, if you can have them pruned back, either yourself or a tree company to do that. Also, there are free apps. Apps that is for your phone that people can get now. MassGov through MEMA, you can get mass alerts. It's a free app. It's a year-round app. Lets you know about winter weather. Lets you know about the summer weather. When we get the thunderstorms in the area, and they go to a watch or they go to a warning, like you see on the TV screen at the bottom, and the little beep, beep, beep comes on your radio or comes on the TV to tell you that there's a severe thunderstorm warning for your area for the next half hour. You'll also get that on your phone. It gives you heads up winter weather, summer weather, fall weather information. Along those same lines, the mention of the beep, 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 the emergency action system, broadcast system, whatever that we've grown up with since we were all kids. They are going to be doing a test tomorrow afternoon at 2:20 Eastern Daylight Time. Big change is going to be, this is going to be a national test. It's going to be done clear across the country at 2:20 Eastern Time tomorrow. The government, when we got these in the past, they were only local. They were from your local TV station. Now we've gotten into the cable networks of the age. We're in digital now from analog. The government finally realized that it's time to join the club and be able to put out these messages nationally, so that if there is probably a terrorist alert, or if there's a large-scale weather event or other possible natural disaster, they can get that message out with the point of a finger on a computer by pushing send. So that's really what this test is going to be tomorrow, is finally Homeland Security and the nation being able to get large-scale messages, not just out to hundreds of thousands, but now we're talking tens of millions. So expect that tomorrow at 2:20 in the afternoon. Lastly, I'll just finish up that after Preparedness Month, we're leading into Fire Prevention Month in October. And the firehouse, we'll be having our annual open house on Saturday the 3rd from 10 to 2, so please come by. We'll still have information on preparedness. We'll be able to talk with you about any questions you have about how you individually may want to prepare in your home, what you may have, what you may need, resources that we can direct you to. Plus we'll have the fire trucks out. We'll have demonstrations for the kids, of course, and fire hats and pizza and hopefully great weather just like we had today. And it's been very successful in the past. Please tell everybody about it, and come on down to the firehouse and visit with us.
Great source of the weather alerts now are the apps on smartphones, the WeatherBug, Weather Channel, AccuWeather.
Exactly. Pick one you like.
And the first time it comes through, when you're not aware of it, it gets your attention.
Exactly. There's a ton of them, but like I say, from the government, the mass alerts is very good from coming out of MEMA, and you just go to the MEMA.gov website, and it takes you 30 seconds to get the app.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for all you do for the town of Sherborn. Not just in the emergency preparedness stuff, but on so many different fronts. And I sleep a little better at night knowing that you're here, particularly when I know that another winter is coming, and that the Farmer's Almanac is saying it's going to be worse than the last one.
I know.
So, to some extent, we're going to be looking to you and relying on you, and our
But the whole team works together. The police chief, CM&D, with David, and you can expect that again. We will meet whenever we can ahead of time with, when we get that information, as I've mentioned many times in the past from MEMA, and we're watching the weather, we meet, we discuss, and then we even email you, get you the updates as well as, you know, where we need to send out messages and where maybe we'll hold back the rains a little bit because it looks like it's going to be the Cape and Islands problem, and we're just going to get some few inches of snow. And that's the big thing, you know, there's the few inches of normal snow we get in a overnight snowstorm, and then there's, you know, the big storm with the wind and the damage. That's the one we're really looking out for everybody on.
I remember one year we had a big storm on Halloween. That's 6 weeks away?
Yeah.
6 weeks.
Yeah, and that's only a few years ago. That's what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So unfortunately, it is fresh in our mind, and as much, Mark, as I would love to forget about it.
I hate to interrupt this reminiscence, but can I make a motion to declare September as Emergency Preparedness Month in the town of Sherborn?
Awesome. Second, so it's moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Great. Good. Okay, thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Hi, Robert.
Good. It's 7:15. We have a discussion with Dover Sherborn Cable, and in case anybody is either watching or here for Pine Hill Cemetery, we voted earlier in the meeting that we would postpone discussion of that and have the Cemetery Commission and the public safety folks talk to each other and try to work their differences out. So that's not going to be discussed anymore tonight. So, Dover Sherborn Public TV, and David, you've got an intro to this?
Yeah, Dover Sherborn Cable TV, in case you didn't know, is who takes care of our broadcasting. That's a separate outside group from the town. It runs as its own nonprofit, and they broadcast our signal out to all three cable providers: Comcast,
Comcast and
Fios.
Verizon.
Okay. And then recently we had some issues where some sound had been dropped, or the signal was completely gone, and we just wanted to call Doug Ambrose to ask what's going on give us an update with DSC-TV, and if there are any issues that we should be aware of, and maybe talk about some of these performance electronic problems.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting us.
Right.
So I'm Doug Ambrose. I'm the chair of the Cable TV Advisory Committee, as well as the president of the Dover Sherborn Cable Access. It's a rotating role, and other people out of our 9-member board share in leading it. I also want to introduce Mike Klein. He's our executive director in the studio. He's the guy that gets it all done. He sits in the studio at the Dover Sherborn High School. He makes trips over here. He has a staff of several people, one of which is here taping today, Rick Terrara.
Ironically, we can hardly hear you through that mic. I almost can't hear you.
Well, the speaker is pointed that way, but I'll speak up. Sorry about that.
This is why I like the new sitting arrangement.
Right.
Oh,
you can hear, right? Anyway, so we're here to listen to your concerns. We did look back at our reported issues and their resolution, and we have some trends I'd like to report on and some mitigations that we're doing. Would that help?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So trends we've seen, especially this summer, have been some equipment failures, and some are in our equipment here in this closet. Some are on Comcast end, especially in their head end reception of our stuff. We noticed recently there is a problem with this hanging mic that picks up the audience instead of these gooseneck mics. Another trend are some temporary glitches, things that happen occasionally. For example, on Comcast end, inexplicably a demodulator was set to the wrong channel, and we had to notice that it wasn't showing up at the subscriber's house, and then we had to call them up. Weird. Don't know how that happened. Sometimes another temporary glitch we can see is due to AC power loss beyond our hold-up time and on our batteries. And with lightning storms and storms, sometimes equipment doesn't come up in the right order, and then it takes a day or so to notice it and then resolve it. Sometimes we have file glitches in recording to our hard drives in this recorder here and also back in our studio. And recently we learned of interference with the hearing assist transmitter in this room. That was new. That's interesting. Mitigations that we do, one big thing we have planned is better cooling in this closet. I think that's the root cause of some of the board failures and equipment failures over the years. So look for some action on that at our expense. Another one is better monitoring by our staff and volunteers, and that means everyone, actually, everyone in town who's watching this. So we have an email address, quality@dsctv.com. If you see a problem, just email us. Actually, sometimes there'll be a problem for a day or over a weekend and no one's notified us about it. And we can't fix it.
What was that again?
So quality@dsctv.com. And it's on our website and on our crawl screens.
It'd be cool if that streamed across the bottom of the screen.
It does occasionally.
Yeah. When it doesn't work, it doesn't scroll either.
It's very quiet.
.com.
Yeah.
So another mitigation, something that's been in the works for a while, is the ability for Mike and his staff to actually see what the Sherborn subscribers see back in the Dover studio. There has not been a hookup. And in our recent negotiations with Comcast in our license renewal, they agreed to put a wire or a fiber between here and there. And that's due to be installed by 12/31 of this year. And so that'll help with monitoring is a lot of it. Figuring out that there is a problem so you can react.
Because right now we only have the residential feed for Dover since we're in Dover. So I can't monitor the Sherborn signal from our studio, which is at the high school, which is in Dover. So I have to rely on people telling me. I can log on to the computer to control what plays. I can see if it's playing, but I can't tell how good it looks from there. I have to physically go over here to see how it looks.
So the signal doesn't come through the high school offices?
Right.
It comes directly from here?
It originates from here, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we run 3 channels, the government channel, the education channel, and the public access.
Yeah.
And it's actually 3 separate channels for each town. And we share some content, especially the education.
So if someone were to email you at that quality address, what would the response be? You would get that on your computer, you'd be able to change things from the computer or go into the studio and fix it?
Yeah, I mean, we would either do it remotely or come in here and take a look and determine what the problem is, and then if we determine if it's nothing with our equipment, if it's a Comcast or Verizon issue, we would call whatever cable company is having the issue and work with their technicians to mitigate the problem. If it's something here, then we would troubleshoot it.
And is that only daytime when you're in the office, or it's around the clock? You've got somebody looking for those emails? How does that work?
I mean, it's not like around the clock, but I mean, we do check our emails often during the day and off hours as well.
And the email gets echoed to me and other board members, and I look at it all the time.
Right.
I usually send in many of the messages. Another mitigation is better prep before these meetings and pre-check, making sure things are set up and going smoothly. And we pledge to do more of that. So that's what we have for trends and mitigations that we know about. And I mentioned the email quality@dsctv.com.
And also you can, studio number is 508-785-0737. And if nobody's in the studio, you can always leave a message.
There won't be someone there during our meetings, though, right?
Usually not now.
I mean, we're going to find out about a problem at 6:15 when we've had it where our wives are sending us a text message,
Right.
hey.
Well, that's why we want to get here. I've said that we are getting here earlier, just to...
Your wife cares.
Well,
You look like an egg.
Well, that's why, I mean, we want to get here earlier now just to ensure that everything is working correctly beforehand.
And of course, we do monitor the subscriber feed here. We switch between Verizon and Comcast. We have what the subscribers see right out of that cable.
That's great. Is there
a way that we could get a monitor out here that they could see?
Absolutely. You want to see yourself on TV live?
No.
No.
I think David's had some past
I can see
experience.
yourself if you open the door.
It's actually really
It's had
helpful,
some past
so you
experience
can know
with
if the
yourself.
camera's on you when you have a side conversation or that kind of thing. I always thought it was very helpful to the selectmen when they were having a meeting.
Yeah.
That they knew what was, not the direct that's being recorded, but the feedback.
Right.
So that they can see what's going on over the air.
I would say most meeting halls I've been in when I'm doing lawyer work at meeting halls has one of those monitors if you're on, if you're being on TV.
Yeah.
You can see what the camera is seeing. Almost every place.
In the Dover Selectmen, they can see the TV in our equipment area too, and they always look towards the monitor to know exactly when we're on, and so they know to address the camera at the beginning.
Have you noticed a difference in the incident rate between Verizon and Comcast, or you probably don't have that many problems to compare, but if Comcast have more, Verizon have more?
My impression is that Comcast has been trending more, but that can change at any time.
Yeah. Small base, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And is it consistent throughout town, or?
Yeah, I mean,
Are
it
there
is
areas-
possible that different sectors, segments would have different problems. I haven't heard about that. I always check it at my parents' house, check it at my house, call up people who have Verizon if I have Comcast. That's usually it's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else we can take note of and help with?
Yes, question for the future if we're done talking about today's issues. Long term, there's been discussions about recording, if not going on air, with a lot more meetings outside of just the Board of Selectmen. But in recent past, as we've been talking about the issues of lines across the screen and no volume, it seemed unlikely that we should talk about recording more when we have these issues. And I wonder if once we flush maybe some of these quality issues out, or maybe some of the equipment issues, what you think it would take as next steps to kind of up the ante on how many meetings we're getting recorded. I mean, there's probably about, 3 times more meetings than are getting recorded now that would be considered policy type.
Well, it's worth listing what meetings we actually...
Like from different boards besides the Board of Selectmen?
Planning Board, Board of Health, ZBA.
Yeah. Let's list what we actually tape now. So we're obligated to tape the Selectmen meeting and the regional high school, regional school committee, as well as the local school committee, and then town meetings, of course. We also cover the advisory board marathon day sessions, and then some other sort of elective meetings that are hot
Yeah, we've
topics.
covered like planning board, like if there's like a big issue, we've been requested to record it. We haven't done it on a regular basis, but if it's a real big meeting, we've been asked to record it.
And I guess what my question is, and maybe you can't even answer it right now, what would it take long term if the town were to say as a policy we want to start recording all planning board, zoning board, which probably aren't as much as conservation and Board of Health meetings?
Yeah, so in our agreement between the Access Corporation and the town, it's just those things that I listed. So the easy answer is, well, we'd like more volunteers to do it rather than spending staff hours doing that. That being said, we're willing to ramp it up. I will say that parity between Dover's coverage and our coverage is important because we're a combined Access Corporation with Dover. So it would have to be in lockstep. So.
Interesting.
As far as staff doing it, I mean, if a volunteer is willing to, record all the Sherborn conservation meetings, then
we want more content. We want to fill the time with a lot of variety.
Yep.
Do we have enough equipment to even entertain that, though?
That's why most meetings are conveniently done in here.
Right.
Meetings that are run simultaneously or in the other room, we bring portable equipment.
Okay, and there's a school committee meeting right now, so that's being recorded at Pine Hill?
Correct. Usually they're here, and therefore they have the ability to go out live as well. But tonight, yes, somebody's recording the meeting at Pine Hill.
And actually, getting new equipment with our budget is not an issue. Staff is more of an issue, and volunteers, we always want more people to participate.
Looks like Pat's trying to volunteer.
So Pat, you got something on this?
Yeah, just one other thing with volunteers to record more meetings. A number of the groups, and I'm not going to mention which ones, don't really want their meetings recorded, okay? And part of the request is whether they will accept the fact that we're going to record them. I mean, that's another consideration.
Yeah, that wasn't really part of my question.
Well, no, I know. I'm just saying that's another consideration.
Sure it
Because if they don't want to be, and you know, some of them can tend to get boring, and you know, you can sit through 5 hours of meetings and get about 3 seconds of good stuff.
That's why you record it, so you can fast forward.
Fast forward.
Yeah.
DVRs are a wonderful thing.
So Doug, in some other communities, the selectmen's meetings and these other meetings are posted almost immediately to the town's website. Do we have that capability, or can we have that capability?
Yeah, well, right now what we do is usually the day after the meeting, it's posted on, we have a YouTube channel which you can access from our website, dsctv.com. So it's usually posted like the next day.
Can we do that, David, through the town's website? Can we just get that button put on the town's website so people can go to the town website?
To a specific meeting or to their page with all their meetings?
To a specific meeting. I mean, if they were organized under selections and school committee and town meeting.
Are they all on YouTube?
Yep.
It's a combination of YouTube and our own servers, which have fixed IP addresses, and they can stream a number of connections. But YouTube is better accessible anywhere around the world with more simultaneous connections.
I think people, if they know to look for it, might look to YouTube, and I was told you can look to YouTube, but if you're looking on a town website for minutes and for contact information, and oh look, here's the last meeting of the selectmen, and I'm in.
Yeah, we could post the link. We have like a whole page dedicated to like Sherborn Selectmen's meetings.
No, but on our page we can go back to the original posted agenda that we put on the website now and insert a hyperlink.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So you just link it by meeting, and if somebody comes along, they want the incredible discussions we've had tonight to be part of their permanent collection.
Well, they would open the agenda.
They could just open it up and download it, and they'd be all set.
And what I do, David, is I subscribe to that YouTube channel, so I get an automatic email when a new thing is posted.
So you're one of the 7
That's
viewers
awesome.
that...
It's more than you might think.
Yeah.
3.
Especially like the regional school committee for some reason. I mean, an average meeting will get like 250, 300 views.
They do?
I don't know why, but...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Paul, good.
How are we doing on the renewals of the licenses?
Well, we just renewed the Comcast license, and we're 7 years into the 15-year license with Verizon. So about 6 years from now, we'll ramp up again negotiating, and we'll see what the climate is at that time. It's a moving target in this world.
How long is the new Comcast license? What's the duration?
10 years.
And they're doing everything they said they were going to do?
Yes. We'll remain to see if they meet their commitment on hooking up that video return line between here and the studio. My assumption is they will.
By December?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes, Sean.
Since we discussed it, it almost seemed like everyone agreed there should be a monitor up there.
Yeah.
Is now a good time to ask for it? Are we asking now? Are we going to buy it?
I think Doug said they would set that up.
I took a note. I'll have to pass it by our board. It shouldn't be an issue. We have some funds for things like that. Sounds like a good idea.
If it's a problem, then let me know.
I'd rather use their phone than yours.
That's what I'm going to say.
I don't want to take time now, but where would you like it? Where are you picturing it?
Pretty much where Pat's sitting right there, just straight.
That's where
Take my seat?
I don't know where you put
Well,
it.
it seems you're going to have to wear a blue shirt from now on.
Oh, you can put it above Rick? Just above the door.
That's an idea, actually.
We'd have to run the line in from here out, because I don't think there's any cable connection.
Just straight above you.
But I think right above there is probably
That's not a bad idea.
your best connection.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to run.
That's good.
All right, great. Anything more for the
We'd like a
agenda?
65-inch LED.
We'd also like to be able to turn the station if we get too boring.
The meeting gets a
See what
little...
Hawkington Board of Selectmen
Helmet cam.
We may be watching Patriots game while...
Yeah. There's a big game going on.
All right, good. Bob, you have something to say?
A question, would television encourage or discourage more efficient meetings?
Well, we're already on television.
You are, but I'm talking about
Other committees?
those that go on, I'm told that some meetings go on at great length without getting much done.
Well, we would be able to see.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's midnight, we could go home and continue watching.
One of the great things that television has done for the public sector was there used to be people who fall asleep at meetings.
Yeah.
And there used to be people who would show up drunk. And there would be people who behaved really badly. And when that's being televised, somehow all those people were weeded out. So it does have a very beneficial effect.
Good.
People have to behave.
Well, I'm talking about more about people who talk on without really saying anything, which is an unfortunate.
We got 18 or 20 presidential candidates.
Wait till tomorrow night, you'll get your fill of that.
I'd like to comment on Bob's thing. I have sat and taped some of those meetings that have gone on for, because I am there has absolutely nothing to do with how long the meeting goes, believe me. They will do it whether you're there or you're not there. They have their own ways of treating things, and
The
they
reason I
seem
brought it
to
up,
run
it
on,
makes for a
you know.
very accurate representation of what happened at a meeting, to be able to replay it, rather than reading notes. That's why I asked.
And then also, I mean, I've seen plenty of town meetings where, or selectmen's meeting, you know, in different towns where there's an issue and then somebody will, you know, come in and say, oh, I was just saw what you were saying on TV, I want to add to that. Or,
Yeah, we have that. People see it. It's certainly good for transparency.
Good. One of the things I encourage as a town council is for people to tape record meetings. If they're not being televised, have a tape recording of your meeting. So later on, if there's a dispute as to exactly what was voted or what was said, you have the minutes, but you also have an underlying report. And recording is pretty easy. And at some point, we actually recorded here with tape recording to help with the minutes.
That's what's going on right there on the corner of the table.
Of course, I can only hear me, but...
That's right.
Yeah, there's no problem with that. You can be at the other end of the table.
The minutes come back. I wonder...
Just put it back on one Paul.
Yes, sir.
Just one comment. When I do the selectmen's meetings, you'll notice you have the graphics on there. So when you come home from work, when you turn on the selectmen's meeting, you know what you're talking about. I leave it on there. I do that extra. I don't have to do that. I do that to make a better connection for the selectmen's meeting.
Thank you.
So it doesn't get boring that way. Which means it's not boring.
And we also
I would just like to say
coordinate
that I've used that many times. It's very helpful to be able to find where it is you're looking for.
and even when you're watching a replay, you can, you know, see where you're at the meeting, so you know exactly where you want to go.
And you get fast forward.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, good. If there's nothing more, we can move on to financial report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next, you might tell Bob that you've already covered the road issue, because that's what it's here for.
Bob, were you here for anything specific? If you're looking at the road issue, we did already cover that. Oh, okay.
Not sure you're good.
Bob, they're talking to you.
Oh.
Are you here for anything specific?
No.
Okay, because we skipped some agenda items, which is the reason I was asking. I didn't want you
I'm
to...
here about the operation.
Excellent, good. We're almost going to get to that.
Okay. I'll try not to fall this time. An update from the Finance Department. Usually in the first and second quarter of each fiscal year, there's 5 major tasks that are occurring within the Finance Department. The first is for Department of Revenue. We work on the combining balance sheet, which is part of the free cash certification process. This year we submitted it August 13th, 2015. I have been working on it with our representative from the Department of Revenue, Andrew Nelson. We are waiting on one outstanding form by the town, and it is typically due on September 30 each year. So we're more than a month or 2 months ahead of schedule. Last year, just as a benchmark, last year it was submitted on December 29, 2014. So it gives you a gauge on how we're doing. The second major initiative is the tax recapitulation worksheet that deals with the assessor, the accountant, the collector, as well as the treasurer. With that form, we are estimating that we're going to submit that either tomorrow or Monday at the absolute latest. I know the Board of Assessors wanted to meet one more time before that was submitted. We have scheduled Andrew Nelson, our Department of Revenue representative, to come in on September 21st. Our target date is still tax bills for September 30th. However, worst case scenario, if it does require additional review by the Department of Revenue, it could be mid-October before tax bills are issued. Worst case scenario, I'd like to give both parameters there. The third item is the Department of Revenue Schedule A. It's another way of stating your financial reports. That is typically due on November 30th of each year. I have that 95% already complete. It's contingent upon free cash being certified, because a lot of the figures in Schedule A are from your free cash certification. So that one's pretty much ready to go as soon as free cash is certified, which should be within the next couple weeks. The fourth item is the audit process of the prior year. We already had our initial preliminary audit field work in July, the week after the fiscal year closed, July 15th. The second scheduled field work and final field work is the first week of October. I've made it very clear to the auditors our expectation is final audit documents by November 30th. They indicated that should not be a problem if there's one caveat. The Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB, is issuing new language to go in financial statements. If they don't have that language provided by the Government Accounting Standards Board, that would be the only holdup. If we said proceed without that language, they wouldn't be able to give us that unqualified opinion. We go in with a qualified, which is not something we want. So if we do not have finals by November 30th, and it's okay with the board, I can even post drafts to the town website with that caveat explained. As a benchmark, last year, the audit as well as Schedule A was submitted in March of 2015, about a month after I arrived. The last item that we are working on simultaneously is a 2017 budget. We are already starting the templates. What we're doing is we're adding a couple columns this year. We're adding a 3-year average so you can see the expense actual trend. We're also adding dollar increase columns and percent increase columns so that when you review the total as well as each line, you'll be able to see if there's a significant change in that particular line item, total salary or total bottom line budget by department. And we are working on the capital program, a new template that'll go out to departments that'll provide more information, and we expect to have that out within the next 2 weeks and have departmental submittals back by Halloween, October 31st. So other items that we've worked on just recently, the Insurance Advisory Committee, now that we have a retiree, I'm sending out notifications this week to the bargaining units to select their 7 members so that we can schedule a meeting early October at the latest for our first meeting. Diane and I worked on an analysis for the Personnel Board. They're reviewing all job classifications to see what positions we have, what are filled, do we have job descriptions, has something been adopted and a table not updated. That work we completed last week. It's going to the Personnel Board tomorrow morning. And the last item is, this is going to be the first year that Sherborn puts in the 2016 salary survey with Mass Municipal Association. That again is about 95% complete. I just need to add a few more figures to it tomorrow morning and it will be submitted so that we'll be part of the communities that you can benchmark against other communities will be in that data field.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything? Paul, you got comments?
Sure, I can start and then maybe turn it over to the financial gurus here, but I did want to say how totally pleased I am about how the free cash number was addressed early. Every year, I think for 20 years, I've been pounding on the desk asking for the free cash to be done. And we'd get to November, December, January, and we wouldn't have the free cash number. We'd be going into budgets. We wouldn't have the free cash number. Just absolutely delighted that you've put that kind of energy in and have gotten us teed up so that we can get an early free cash number. And I think you said August 13th maybe, and that you expect it like in the next couple of weeks. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
That's a miracle. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to also say that it's a team effort. It's the entire finance department. It involves all four of us working hard to get the information in, to have that deliverable earlier than prior years.
We also have the audit is going to be significantly earlier, right?
Yes, it's we're expecting November 30 as opposed to March 25th is what last year's was. Or March 2015, I'm sorry.
A question on that. Are we using the same auditing firm?
Yes, we are. They have 1 year left remaining on their contract. I have let them know that I do plan to go out for bid for the next rounds to see what information we can receive back.
Good. And then on the budgets, I think the 3-year thing is a great addition. But one of my frustrations when I was on advisory was we were always comparing budget to budget kind of numbers. And can we somehow work in a prior year actual?
We'll be comparing 3 years of actuals.
Okay, so we'll see all of the actuals, not just the average of the 3 years.
Right. You're going to see all 3-year actuals. You're going to see the current fiscal year's budget, and then you're going to see a 3-year average of the actuals. So if you're actually spending $10,000 on average a year per office supplies, but for some reason in 2016 the budget line item had $15,000 in it, we'll be looking at, for 17, we need to reduce that. We need to get it in line at $10,000. On the flip side, if you look at utilities and you're seeing a trend upwards or downwards, depending on what's happening within the world, we'll be able to adjust that line item accordingly as well. So instead of keeping $10,000 in a line item where you need 21, we'll adjust the line, make a recommendation to adjust the line up. And if departments are looking for anything in excess of what the recommendation is, they would need to go to their respective supervisor and board before it goes to the advisory committee, and then advisory committee would vet it as well, and then it would go to town meeting.
And I don't know if you're going to talk about future
Sure,
actions, but you and I had spoken about an investment policy.
Yes, policies are still on my to-do. I usually work on them on Fridays, and I have been working the past few Saturdays. I do have templates from prior towns that I've used. I just need to add things that have already been adopted by Sherborn to them, and then you should be able to have those. There is, I believe, 6 or 7 main financial policies that are the core for the board that we've accepted in my prior towns that I'll be more than happy to bring them forward.
Can we get those on the next meeting? Do you think you'll have them in time?
For October 1st, or would you prefer it, because October 1st is pretty heavy.
The first is going to be, it's practically full with the DEP. And
That's a tough meeting. Maybe get on the next one after that.
But it could, exactly. You basically work with David and let me know, and I'll make sure that I have those ready. We did work on a draft reimbursement policy that we plan to bring to the board rather soon.
Great, thank you.
You can circulate the language ahead of time. You don't have to wait for the meeting. If you've got standing language that you want to have people look at it and comment
Sure.
through David, we could do that.
Sure. I can start working on the comparisons. Like I said, I've been working on weekends too, so I'll make sure I can take care of that.
Yeah, if you've got time to do that, that's great.
Sure, I have them.
Yeah. Sean, anything? David?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and I remembered I had already talked to Irene about it, about maybe adding another column that was a current year projection, just so departments could project where they're going to be at the end of the year, in
Yes.
the current year.
Yes.
And that can be part of that form, or it can be a separate exercise.
And I would just say, as we're adding columns, remember that type size gets smaller and harder to read. So try to balance the information with the readability. Otherwise, there have been times in past years where you get those sheets and they're at a scale that you literally can't read them. So.
In prior towns, I have gone to 11 by 17 so that it's legible for everyone, as well as posted them online.
That's maybe the better way. Heather.
Can I just ask about the investment policies? Is that an accumulation of existing investment policies, or are we potentially crafting new investment policies?
It's going to be an accumulation of existing, as well as making sure that it's in accordance with Mass General laws, just talking in a minute. And our policy, you'll be able to see it.
Okay, yeah, because it is statutorily the
Exactly.
treasurer's responsibility for investments. So I just want to make sure I have a chance to peruse those before potentially even they go in front of the board.
Yes, and that's one that actually the Palmer and Dodge, now Lock and Lord, has reviewed in the past before it went before boards, and that's our bond council. So definitely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
so
that's
much.
good. It's good to work those out together.
Just on the issue of investments, I hope we don't invest in tobacco stocks,
I know.
Iran stocks, and alcohol
No.
stocks.
There's certain
Gun
stocks that are
manufacturers.
forbidden by Mass General law,
Chinese
and within
companies.
that policy, it actually outlines what you can invest funds in.
Okay.
Okay. On that
Text
note,
stocks.
thank you, Irene. David, you had an operational discussion?
Well, I was going to mention a couple of things first. One is the household hazardous waste day is Saturday. And another thing I wanted to mention was the new conservation agent has started with the new conservation administrative assistant. Today, I think, was the first day that they were both here together.
Who are their names?
Allery and Heather, but I can't remember the last names. Allery Bright and Heather, that's the one that escapes me. I'm sorry. But they are going to be in October at some point about, I think Michael Lesser mentioned that he wanted to come in and talk to you about the fields at Sherborn at some point. So at the latest, that's when you'll meet them here. Otherwise, you could swing by the office on Tuesdays and say hi.
I wonder if, now that we have them here, not that we're dumping it on them right away, but maybe they would have a chance to at least give us an update if they've reviewed it all. Any of the stormwater work that Bridget, obviously we had in Bridget's hands.
Bridget has been transitioning some things with her. The first item that was brought to their attention to look into and report on was the Maple Street, when the vendor dumped the stuff over the guardrail, and they said they were looking into that. And I mentioned to her about the, however they cite that the ground level should be restored and the vegetation restored, and that she should look at the before and after pictures and see if that's something that they should weigh in on.
And that's the one where the vendor, the contractor, said they would step up to the plate and fix anything that's identified as being unlawful or needing to be remediated, right?
Right. So I think that'll be restored to everybody's content. The other item was the swap facilities. This was the Selectmen Disorder group that was kicked off, I don't know, a year ago, and Mark Brandon was appointed the representative to that committee. They've been meeting along with MAPC, and currently they've identified a few items that they'd like to put out to bid, and those are HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and elevators. So those will be going out to bid on a cooperative basis. So right now, MAPC will draft that document, send it to us for edits, and then put that out. Then when the results come back, we can compare it to what we already have, and hopefully the results are better than what we currently have.
And if they're not?
And if they're not, we stay with our
We're not
current
required
vendor.
to.
Right. Then that brings me to, Mark, did you want to say anything on that? No?
Nope.
Okay. The next item was, I was asked to bring something forward about how you could bring in an outside consultant to look at certain functions and offices. I think originally it was, the idea got started when the Board of Health had agreed that they were going to look at their internal operations with staffing, their processing, the permits, fees, everything. So I kind of look at that model. Actually, several departments could stand to use that kind of outside look at them. And I was thinking that conservation, Board of Health, building commissioner, cemeteries, transfer station are all operations that involve the public that could stand an outside person coming in and looking and then just seeing what things we might be able to change. I think Sean has some comments on why this was brought up.
So, to somewhat keep a narrow focus, because consultants can look at the entire gamut of our entire government. We've had that. But nearly a day doesn't go by in my life outside of being a selectman that I don't have discussions with people that work all over the state, possibly all over the region. And Sherborn is pretty infamous. We're costly to work in, we're difficult to deal with. And frankly, professionals that deal in their general interest prefer to not work here. That's a problem. And while that may seem to some as we're protecting the town, we're not necessarily always protecting the town. And there's no easy way for any one individual to say, well, that was a really expensive fee I just paid, because I have no idea how to research that. But when people keep telling me, man, not only have I never heard of someone paying that much, but that's 10 times what you should be paying. I don't know how to prove that right or wrong, but a consultant could do that. They could compare. I know that some of the fees that we charge legally were required to show that that's a fair assessment of the costs to the town, and I know that we're way out of line, some of which by a factor of 10. And should that be challenged? No, I think internally we should just be able to assess that so that there's no one person going after any committees. Someone should be able to come in, that's what they do. They assess the costs, they assess how we're operating, and possibly come back with some cost savings measures too as to how we're running an office that's full of a couple different groups that don't necessarily work that well together.
These kind of consultants usually bring back some sort of best practices of recommendations, whether it's for staffing, organizational setup, or processes, or forms, or electronic transactions, or and they can look at fees as well.
I thought we had a fee study that has been underway. And
it is underway.
Presented.
Yeah, and
does it make sense to hire a consultant to look at fees when we've already looked at them?
Not individually fees. That's why I said the fees is just like one piece of the operations. But Irene is, she has my original spreadsheets that I was working on with the intern, and she's currently received the recommendations from the building commissioner and who else? Transfer station fees that we had been looking at. And once they get signed off on by Irene, they'll come in. But what I had originally started to look at was whether the fee itself was fair compared to the inputs that we're putting into it. And that's the law on the fee, is that you can't charge more than you're supposedly incurring as a cost to do that inspection or whatever. So.
But you can charge a proportion of the overhead.
Yeah,
and
right,
fully charge it. I mean, and you know, with all due respect for Sean's comments and what he's heard from people, I wouldn't be willing to concede at this point that we've got fees that are 10 times or any times the amount that's justifiable. I mean, I would, you know, be open to having somebody show me that if they think that's the case, but I also think we've got different boards that have made decisions over the years, and there's lots of places around the state that also charge a lot. But when somebody comes into our town and says we're hard to work with, whether it's a fee issue or whether it's just a, you know, I don't get calls back, the office hours aren't open when I need to be there, I can't find the right person to talk to, the inspector doesn't come out in time, the inspector tells me one thing one day and then tells me a different thing the next day and then a different thing the day after that. Those are huge problems, and I have heard that about Sherborn, and sometimes you hear that things have gotten a little better and sometimes you hear that they haven't.
Right.
And I'd be open to having a consultant look at those kinds of issues too. And that gets back to that business climate discussion we had earlier also.
Yeah, we had, there was an issue in Framingham with the assessing department where some things had happened where they'd lost their credibility, and we brought in an outside consultant who met with each of the employees, went out with the field workers to see exactly what they were doing, what information they were bringing back, how it was put in the computer, which software they were using, everything, and it was it restored the confidence. And one of the recommendations was to I think there was I'm forgetting the word, abatements. There was this parade of people lined up in the auditorium for abatements that they kind of opened themselves up for, to say, we'll be more accommodating abatement. But you know, they kind of restored the faith in that department, and it was a good study, and it was that study was less than $10,000. It was $5,000 to $10,000, somewhere through there.
To the extent that this study would involve operations, cemetery you mentioned, I think you might have mentioned health, but if you didn't, you probably should have. Would you be getting buy-in from those boards? I think you'd have to. I don't know that we can authorize any kind of study of those operations.
Yeah, you'd have to have their buy-in, because that consultant needs to look at all their documents, needs to talk to each of the employees, the field workers, and yeah, so you'd have to get their buy-in. You could also just we could find a couple of consultants, have them in the future, have one in and explain what they could do with the other bodies present. Or, I mean, there are a number of ways you could go about it.
Paul?
On the state level, I'm involved with reviewing all of the rules and regulations that exist. The governor has issued an executive order on the assumption that life is hard for people to do business in Massachusetts because there's too many regulations. And sometimes one agency's regulations conflict with other agencies' regulations. They're not coordinated. And so he's asked all departments to take a second look at their regulations and eliminate as many as possible that might be duplicitous, expensive because there are fees associated with it, and so on. Why can't we have that done here, maybe with the help of a consultant, to take a look at all the stuff we have? So if one board requires that, I don't know, a hole be dug over here on the left, and another board requires the hole to be dug on the right, that we actually have that consolidated so there's one hole that can serve two purposes. Why can't we do that?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I, without dragging it into it, I've spent the past year kicking off building a house in this town. It's been painful.
You guys could be the subcommittee of the whole. If you want.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this to attack anyone. I'm saying there's definitely some room for improvement, because if it's that difficult for me, and I know everybody in town, you can imagine what it's like for a builder that builds in Natick, that builds in Wellesley, and says, I'm going to go buy a piece of property in Sherborn, and I'm going to build a beautiful house. And he might go bankrupt by the time he's done writing checks out. And he may not even understand the process that's supposed to be somewhat of a streamlined process, town to town to town to town. They should be similar. There's state laws that ensure that, and it's...
Still, building in Wellesley is tough, too. They're old DPW.
I know it is, but it's a different market.
The Harvard Pilgrim building, that took about 15 years.
But I would submit that if you took away the pain points that keep you from getting your project moving, the fees would probably be a lot less of an irritant.
Both. Sure. But
it's the stuff that delays you and holds you up. That's what's the real problem.
It's definitely a problem.
Quite a big
But, I mean, if I told you I spent $10,000 just before I ever even pulled a permit in town, would that surprise you? Just moving dirt around.
I don't know.
I mean,
built
you don't know,
I don't
but
know if that's a good number or not.
it's a lot of money, and it's not. It may not be very indicative of what it actually costs the town. So it's both. It's definitely both. You shouldn't be funding operations for the town via permits, and some would say that's going on. And I'm talking conservation, board of health, everything. It's excruciating. And I deal with people with, they're professional engineers. They're experts in their field, and they call me all the time. I can't deal with Sherborn. I don't want to work in Sherborn anymore. And that's not with my project. I mean, they're reaching out to me. They're begging me to help. And it's helped the town. And some of that you can draw a link to what is our tax rate and why is it that we have trouble improving our housing stock, which is something I've talked about since day one. Why isn't our housing stock, why aren't we increasing our values? It's difficult to do that. That's my primary business, is raising people's taxes by improving their homes. And it is excruciatingly difficult for even just homeowners to do work into it.
I'm all in favor of what you're saying. Make it easier. We've had a whole series of horror stories about these beavers, as you all know, and because you probably have all heard it. But if you have a beaver that's dammed your stream and it's coming to your well, you can't do anything until you go to the Board of Health. Then after you go to the Board of Health, then you got to go to the Conservation Commission. Then after you go to the Conservation Commission, you have to go to the Animal Control Officer. And the Animal Control Officer has then got to certify to the Board of Health and to the... So you have all these boards and committees, all of whom are independent. All of them have different schedules, and they meet at different times, and they have different fees to get rid of one beaver. That's why we've had Elliot Taylor in here saying, can't we just shoot them?
That's exactly.
But that's sort of the level of frustration that people have, that why do we have so many boards and committees to begin with? And if you're going to have so many boards and committees, why do we have to go to all of them and pay fees to everybody to have their little piece of things added together in order to get one job done?
But the beaver issue that's a red herring. That's all controlled by state law, and every town has boards that meet at different times. I think it's more than that, Paul. I don't think
It is more than that. I'm just citing that as an example.
Well, I just don't think we should play into that kind of general critique of government approach. I think if there's particular issues with particular boards, but I don't think across the board, our town bodies and our town boards are just here to make life difficult for people. They serve a purpose, and there is, there's coordination. Sometimes there's not coordination other times, but I think, I don't know, I think sometimes those kind of comments go too far, and it really turns people off in the same way you might say they're turned off because you think the fees are too high. I mean, I think we should be here to improve the government, but not necessarily to slam the people who are volunteering and trying to do their best on these boards and committees. Bob.
I think this goes back many years. And
do you want to take a microphone on this? Do you think? I think it'd be helpful for valuable for people to hear what you have to say on this. You've got a lot of background and experience in the town.
For years, Sherborn discouraged development. Didn't want it. There were a fair number of people here in town who felt we're an ideal size. I remember a study done by somebody in the state saying, not just Sherborn, but projecting that we would be twice the size that we are today 10 or 15 years ago. There must be a reason. And you've been discussing it. Part of, to me, that attitude still persists in some places that are particularly well organized. And not to be critical, because it may well have been the right thing to do, but Pulte on Maple Street is sort of an issue. Was that, that may well have been the right thing to do. I didn't happen to agree with it, but that's, that's what makes issues. There's people who think one way and another. The Board of Health presently is 3 people. They're elected. They don't have to do anything that you tell them or anybody else tells them. I've heard suggestions that, the selectmen went to 5, maybe the Board of Health should go to 5. And that maybe there ought to be qualifications to run. Some sort of experience. You can't do that in a democracy, but I mean, at least it's worth thinking about. I mean, Sean presents issues and problems that have existed probably forever, and most people agreed with it up until our taxes started getting really high, and it seems to me that it's so much deeper that it's not just a question of you guys discussing it. The town has to think about this and has to understand what what not only what the issues are, but what happens because we do the things that we do, and should we change, which is hard to do. I mean, a lot of changes require a 2/3 vote, which is, as we all know, I think almost impossible. It's very difficult, if not to say anything else, but it just seems to me that I heard discussions when I was sitting up there years ago that we definitely didn't want rapid growth. We had a nice town, and nobody was worried about the town center, and our taxes were a lot lower. And schools, I mean, gosh, I was over at a track meet at the high school recently, and I thought it was a private school. I hadn't been there in years. I mean, it looked like Phillips Academy, one of the Phillips Academies. It was beautiful. I know we didn't have to, a lot of that was paid for with donations, but I'm paying for it for maintenance. It's not that we shouldn't have it, but we do. And I can't explain it better than that. It just it's an issue that goes back for a long, long time. I mean, maybe to post-war II, World War II, when we established the zoning. Everybody wonders why Dover has lower taxes. They have, significantly more building lots over there. I don't think they have anything larger than 1 acre zoning. I'm not sure, but I seem to remember that. And the town in 1946 or 7 or so established 2 and 3 acre zoning, and we're living with it. And it wouldn't do any good to change it now because houses are situated in the middle of this zoning, and there's no room to change it. But we, 5-member Board of Health, or maybe they should be appointed. Conservation Commission, do they compare notes with the Board of Health? that make, say, let's help this guy. Let's do this so that he can get it done, not so that just some small issue that somebody on that board feels is important should hold it up. So I've sounded off.
Thank you. John?
Just to reiterate some of this, and I probably agree with most of what Bob just said, but that's not I'm not proposing this whole grand scale, let's relook at everything in town and how we function and change zoning. Trying to keep a pretty narrow focus on the operational workings of some of the committees, and it's not so 40Bs can come in and, get to the 10% housing stock, and it's not to make it more builder friendly, really. This is just to operate more efficiently. If you need to get your Title V so you can sell your house so you can retire somewhere else, that should be not quite as difficult as it is. We have families trying to move into town before school starts. They shouldn't, before they even get here, they're getting held up by a month or two because of water test results. And I mean, it goes on and on and on, and there's no, sometimes there's a good explanation, sometimes not. Sometimes it's, I couldn't even imagine an explanation, but someone outside of this group, I'd like to propose, should look at the inner workings of all of this and how we can be a little bit more customer friendly. And we're the customers. I'm not talking about people moving into town, buying tract houses, us, the residents, and how it's affecting all of us.
One solution that's fairly easy, and that we've done in other places, is an idea that comes out of the federal government. They have what are called formula permits. That is like for beavers or for whatever. There's a blanket permit issued. It covers the whole waterfront, and it tells people, if you meet 1, 2, and 3 that's listed there, you never have to come before any board or committee. You automatically have a permit because it's a formula permit. There's no fee. There's no appearances. It's a formula thing. You basically send a notice in saying, I'm taking advantage of this. If not every item has to have its own individual custom hearing. Many of them do. Many of them are unique. We do want to preserve the character of our community. But sometimes we can let go of some of the, everything doesn't have to be custom made. And each time there's new appointments and turnover, people don't remember and all that kind of stuff. You can have these, what are called these formula permits, in which everybody knows what the rules are. You comply with the rules, you're all set.
The town's tried that. I mean, the planning board has had proposals for town meeting for the PUD. It's not as automatic as this federal program, but basically within the business district for footprints of, I think it's currently 2,000 feet, which is very small for a commercial. We've tried to expand it to 5, to 7.5. Every time it's gone to town meeting, it's gotten turned down. To echo what Bob has said, there are some people that just, they don't want to approve, they don't want to give up the ability to approve a specific project. I agree with you, Paul. I think it's much more efficient if I...
And I'm not trying to change that, by the way. That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to make it so you can go just build a PUD downtown and not have any approvals.
Yeah, I mean, the PUD basically is criteria that if you meet, you should be granted a permit. So as a builder, as an investor, you know the parameters of what you can invest in, what you can build. But that's gotten consistently turned down at town meetings. So yeah. Bob is right. There's this constituency that even in the business district doesn't want.
Yeah, but it's two different issues. That's democracy versus inefficiency and administration and bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably address the bureaucracy. It's different to address the democracy. That's
you know, you got to just persuade people you're right,
Right,
on something
which-
like that.
What Bob has been talking about.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. We also, I was gonna say, we also have somebody who's worked in town for over 20 years, which is Gino Carlucci, our very excellent planner, who has probably seen an awful lot and may have some thoughts. And David, I would encourage you to talk with him and get any consultant to talk to Gino about what he has observed, because he's got a lot of experience and a lot of perspective on
He's almost an in-house consultant because he works for other towns as well, and Gino worked with him extensively on the planning board. He is terrific. So in terms of somebody who knows best practices, Gino's a ready
comment
resource.
about the outside consultant. I mean, we've had 2 in the last few years. And I'm not sure, but other than going to 5 Board of Selectmen, I don't know that much else has changed.
But again, they were looking at government. I'm talking permitting.
No, but
Talking
that's
building
that's
department,
government.
permitting, regulation-related stuff. They really didn't get into the inner workings of the building department and Concom and Board of Health. I'm trying to narrow
That's
that
true.
down to that.
But Board of Health is elected, and you can't tell them what to do.
Now, I'm not telling them what to do. I'm not even asking to tell them what to do. They the past year, have committed to doing this. I'm trying to enable that in a way that, because it's also difficult for any one board to hire their own consultant and say, we're gonna try and fix this. It's a system. They only own one piece of it. If we can find a way that everyone buys into looking at the whole system, building department, zoning, Concom, Board of Health, we might actually find some coherent solutions.
I agree with you, but that's change, and that's what people have been reluctant to vote at town meeting.
Okay, and that's, I'm asking for a way through this.
So are you looking for a vote to authorize David to bring an RFP process forward, or
I'm looking
just-
for support. No, I'm not sure what I'm asking for.
I could put together a draft RFP.
All right, and just bring it
Just
back, and we don't need a
distribute it.
vote, you'll just do that as a...
We'd be voting on the RFP when it comes
Right.
back, right?
Is that okay
Yeah.
with everybody?
Yeah.
Sure. Good.
And I should talk to those committees?
And Felix?
Yeah, because I can't just do it with,
What?
I can't do it without them.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never talked about that. Not, but... You can ask them where that went, maybe that's something
The
to look at.
the last thing under the town administrator report, I was just going to say the permits for the Mount Misery cell tower are complete and have been picked up, and that's,
Hooray!
yeah.
Did they start working up there?
Yeah.
Like today?
I thought they started last
Okay.
week.
All right.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it.
There's supposed to be a
Gotta go.
foundation complete next week, I think, for the building.
Good, selectmen reports. Sean, you had something?
I brought this up last meeting, and I'm bringing it up again with a little bit more information. I thought Ed would still be here, but apparently the early conversation tapped him out. I brought up the need for a loader. That's been known for years that we have an old loader. It's aging. It's not news to anyone, at least at this table, that we're going to sit on about $130,000 to $150,000 that's in Chapter 90 approved to be spent via the state. Since our last meeting, Irene looked into it, saw nothing wrong with asking the state if Chapter 90 money could be used for a piece of equipment, as Medfield is doing. Ed reached out to the state rep for the Chapter 90. She gave him conditional approval to go ahead and move forward with it, if that is what we chose to do, that it would fly on the Chapter 90 side. I've had discussions with George Morrell. If we have support, they have it on their agenda tomorrow night, advisory does, to discuss the possibility of doing that. I'm not asking for a vote to go buy a loader, but I'm asking for discussion to possibly support reaching out to advisory and capital budget on the possibility of buying a loader this season, before winter, before we risk losing the loader that we have and being forced into something.
How quickly can you get a loader?
Probably within a week or two. Right now. I didn't see that. I saw a quote that was emailed to me from Milton Cat, which is down in Milford, that included the trade for our loader. We're still fortunate enough that our loader's not dead. We've been warned for years that the transmission will blow. When the transmission blows, you're towing it out for scrap. It's junk. Its season actually starts in about a week or two, and I can speak to that because I hear the trucks coming. When they start ordering salt, they're coming, and that machine gets about 6 to 8, if not 10 hours a day, because every load of sand that comes in has to get mixed and put in there by that loader, and we don't have another piece of equipment that can replace it. And then obviously all through the entire winter, it's used nearly every day. If we lose it during the winter, we can imagine what a snowstorm's going to be like if we lose our loader in the middle of the snowstorm. And then we're going to be scrambling for an emergency purchase or lease, and our hands will be pretty tied at that point. This is money that's legitimate to spend. Yes, it's money we would be spending on roads, but it's money that's going to sit for the next 6 months. We know that that's not enough to even cover Washington Street, so we can have that discussion next year of how much we're going to spend and how to supplement it and what we're going to borrow or free cash or whatever. But this is money that's sitting in the bank. It's interest-free money. Nobody's tax bill is going to go up if we buy this loader, and we have a brand new loader for the winter that's not going to fail.
And all we're giving up is chip sealing a bunch of dead ends.
There may very well still be money. That's flushing out right now, and I believe Ed said it's by the time he gets it out, it's going to be too late this year anyway.
I'm not in favor of chip sealing the dead ends.
Okay. Then fine.
I'd rather
You may very well give that
I'd
up.
rather have a loader.
Yeah.
Or a paved road.
So.
All right, so what are you looking for?
I'm looking for support to head to advisory with Ed. I don't want to just send Ed in to do it. I think it's better if it comes from me. It's my idea. And I think we should do it. And I think it holds some weight if the 5 of us support it. I think advisory is going to see a way that I think they see the advantages to it, and I would think capital budget's going to feel the same way. And then I think if the 3 groups as a whole support it, then I don't see that the town is going to view it as we did something without, them knowing. I mean, normally we know how our capital purchases go. Everyone would bring it up, and it would go to town meeting. This is a slightly different avenue, but I don't see anything that's short-sighted in what we're doing.
Heather, you got a question?
Yeah, a couple. Irene and I have actually spoken about this, so some of my questions are informed, some I came up with additionally tonight. So, first of all, the loader, we have 130,000 approximately available. How much would a loader be?
The quote he got back was right at about 130. There was 18. It was 140, whatever. I'm not sure, but $18,000 is the trade we're getting for that.
Okay, so presumably the Chapter 90 funds would cover the cost of the equipment and
completely.
And then, okay, so then the only caveat, and Irene and I did talk about this today, is I would ask as the treasurer, and we didn't say we would like this to happen, but we would like to request that you consider it, that we not go forward with any purchase until we've gotten the state grant approval on the Chapter 90 funds from the state, so that we know they've agreed to the reimbursement prior to potentially any pre-order or anything.
I think you'd have to do that. I don't
Well,
think you can even do the road projects without doing that.
But we have. So we've started projects without state grant approval.
It happens.
It happens,
Everywhere.
but in
You
this
get a-
particular instance, so since
I would agree. I would completely agree with that.
That's
That's just a drive to Springfield to get that, isn't it?
Well,
You can just drive out there and they sign off on it.
Well, I think they look at. I don't think they just rubber stamp these things, Sean. Irene, you might be able to speak.
I think if you ask John, it's pretty close to that simple because the projects are usually pre-approved.
But this isn't a project. This is a
No, I understand.
purchase of equipment, and that's why I'm saying it's a little bit of a nuance. And as the treasurer, as the finance director, we'd just like to make sure that that state grant approval is signed and in-house before any equipment. And again, this isn't, we didn't say line in the sand, this has to happen or else. I'm asking.
I think it would have to happen because there's no other way. There's no short-term borrow if it doesn't happen. I think that would have to happen.
Okay, perfect, then we're good. That was my concern on that
I would make a
issue.
motion to authorize Sean to pursue that discussion with capital budget and advisory. Does anybody have any discussion or second?
Yeah, I can't support it.
Okay.
I think it goes against the way we've done business in the town. And I really think this is something that needs to go in front of the town meeting and be evaluated in balance with all the other capital things that we want to do. I think the town expects us to spend this money on the roads. And I just can't, I wouldn't support it. I believe that it's an issue. I've heard about it ever since I was on advisory, even with Ed's predecessor, that it's a real problem. But I think it also sort of highlights what kind of a job are we doing on our capital planning down there, and we didn't even get the trucks passed. So I think we need to take a hard look at how we're selling these things to the town, and they wouldn't approve the truck, and then if we turn around and we use this money and do it's not an end run, it's legal, but it could be perceived that way. I just don't think it's going to be good, and so I would not support it.
I want to second Mark's perspective on this and suggest the following. First, I'm very troubled by the fact that the voters voted no on this several times. On
the truck. They didn't vote no.
The loader's been up.
The loader they haven't had an opportunity. I guess that highlights Mark's point.
Well, a related part of that is that the tradition in the town has been that the voters like to get involved with these equipment purchases. They like to hear the presentations. They like to pick it apart. They like to analyze it. We have a tradition of forcing department heads who want equipment to justify it in a very meaningful way, in a way that the voters understand it. And we put it before the voters at town meeting, and we have usually a ballot question. So it's a very rigorous process. We've also found in the past that road work doesn't have the kind of interest and support that the equipment purchases do, which means we're really going to be shortchanging the road work, because I don't see a appropriation for $130,000 to fix unknown roads being of interest to the voters and being passed by the voters in a ballot question, in an override. The truck piece with debt exclusions, with the ability to vote, the ability to say no, is just much more comfortable for the voters. So I think there's a purpose, there's a significance to tradition, and it makes sense to follow tradition. It's worked well in the town in the past. So I'd second whatever Mark said.
I share Mark's view that the advisory and capital budget have a pretty rigorous process and weighing conflicting needs. I think they've done fairly well. I was troubled by the presentation at town meeting as well. I didn't think that was I don't think it gave a fair summary of the information, but I do want to respect the process, so I share your view, Mark.
I think Sean said he wanted to go to capital budget and advisory to see if they would approve it.
Yeah,
so anything he would do would be respecting the process, because it couldn't be done without their approval. He's also raised the scenario, and I'm not really in a position to evaluate it. I think he's much more expert in this than I am, and maybe than others too, which is that this loader is going to break and we're not going to have the capacity to clear the roads this winter if we have storms like we had last winter. And that's a problem for the town.
Let me correct one thing. Advisory and capital have no say in Chapter 90 funds. Chapter 90 funds are solely within the Board of Selectmen. And it's a dangerous precedent, I think, to start saying that we're not going to be spending Chapter 90 funds without running it by all these other boards and committees. It's hard enough to get public buy-in as to what roads, all the disagreements we've had. I want sidewalks done, others don't. We've had discussions about what roads and which roads are more important. If you create the precedent of a new process for Chapter 90 and get all these other boards and committees involved in the expenditure of Chapter 90, we would first be the only town in the state to do that, and B, it's going to bog down all our projects.
I don't think anybody said do it for all the projects, Paul. It was
I
one
think you
project.
got to choose one or all.
Hey,
You think that, but I disagree with you. I don't know why you would. This is a specific type of project. It's a truck.
And so I agree with almost all of what you've said.
Except,
and despite the fact that I've proposed it. And the point Mike was just making is exactly the point. Yes, we have the authority to spend the Chapter 90 money out of respect for the process. And this is a change in the process. That's why I'd be asking in this one instance to get buy-in from advisory and capital budget. We would never do that for road work. This is because it's a change in the process for a one-time, and I agree with the piss poor planning and the capital management of our equipment. And I'm not here asking for a truck, and I wouldn't.
Well, but that brings up another issue, because we had a capital planning, I appreciate what you just said, but we had a capital planning process, and we decided the most important thing we needed was a truck.
I didn't.
Well, that's what came up.
Well, most of the town actually said no thanks.
Well, but I guess the question I would have then would be, okay, fine, you told us last year you wanted a truck, we voted the truck down. Now you found some money, not you, we found some money. Wouldn't we want to buy the truck first?
Yeah. No.
No, I think.
And again,
I think we're making a big mistake, and I think we are enabling a very poor capital planning process.
And I agree with most of that. But again, I'll say I can't turn the clock back a year, 2 years, 3 years. What I know is I would have much rather had a chance to have done that. And perhaps I wouldn't have asked for those 2 trucks. I probably would have asked for that loader every year since no. And the no was the year we had to come back and ask for more money, which I wish we weren't in the position for the highway garage. And the answer was, don't you dare ask for a loader the same year you ask for a highway garage, you're liable to get nothing. And then a fire engine the year after. So the loader got pushed. I'm just putting us in a position I'm just illustrating the position we're in. It's a different circumstance. We have, I think, 3, if not 4 or 5 years in a row not spent our Chapter 90 money. I don't think that's a good idea either. We carry forward our Chapter 90 money. I don't think that looks good. I don't think it's a good financial thing to just bank money at interest-free. And I think it's going to reduce a huge risk. I could not possibly sit up here and say we need a new truck at all right now. But I can say that we can't make it through a winter without a loader. We can burn up 3 of those trucks. I guarantee with one phone call I could have them replaced with a driver in them if we want to hire contractors, but we can't hire out the loader. We need it. I listen to that thing outside my bedroom window all winter. It needs to be there. It's a big liability, and I'm just trying to take that off the table. And it's a slight deviation in process. Therefore, I'm taking a slightly different path, going to advisory, going to capital, if that's what we decide to do, and then bringing it back here.
Is there a way to lease a loader?
There is.
Can you use Chapter 90 money to lease a loader?
I don't know that you could do that.
I don't.
Many future years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what sparked this whole thing wasn't there a headline in the paper that Medfield had purchased a vehicle with their Chapter 90 funds. I think that's what, when we started talking about it,
I started talking about it because Medfield did exactly what I'm trying to do. They bought a loader from Milton Cat with Chapter 90 funds.
Right,
That
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
You said a vehicle.
Oh, no. Then, I haven't used Chapter 90 funds that way before, so I thought that it wasn't even possible. So that's why we had looked into it and found out that it is possible to use the Chapter 90 funds. And I see both sides here. So, but I think what Sean is saying is that he would want the Board of Selectmen's support going to advisory to pitch it to them, but it would still come back for a vote to the Board of Selectmen, I think, before we would actually do a purchase. I think that's what you were hoping for.
Doesn't seem like we have the votes to do that if it were to happen that way.
To go
I don't even have a second on my motion.
Right. I'm just trying to present a scenario.
Would any of us, and I don't know the answer to this from myself, but would any of us, if Sean went and advisory voted 9-0 to do it and capital budget voted 3-0 to do it, would we change our minds?
You would not.
I wouldn't, no.
Okay.
I want to use we don't have enough Chapter 90 money as it is, most.
Because you're worried we wouldn't get it back.
And yet we can't spend it. We don't have enough, and yet we don't
Right.
spend it.
We are going to spend it.
Well,
We've done a statewide survey. This indicates we need $570 million. We're getting $300 million that's spent statewide, so we're getting roughly half of what we need already just to take care of the roads. Just to take care of the roads. And the fact that we don't spend every dime this fall is simply because we started late. It's a management issue. We're going to have the money, which is going to get augmented in January, we believe, by Governor Baker with more money. That's going to get added up so we can start something
You can pave over the
early.
snow.
We can start something in April or May instead of waiting until August.
And then you'll need a debt exclusion borrow next year to buy a loader. It's the same thing. We're not going to have enough money to pave Washington Street, whether we use this Chapter 90 money or not. So if we go to the town and say, Washington Street's $450,000, we didn't spend last year's money till this year, now we're not going to spend this year's money till next year.
We're going to get more than 400. We're going to have more than enough money to do Washington Street. We're going to have just the amount we need to do Washington Street next year.
We didn't this year. And we didn't spend this year's money. That's my point. Would anyone in the financial side of this town agree that we should hold money every year?
That's a management
issue. It's interest-free.
That's a management issue.
Exactly.
But that's not an issue about whether or not...
But we can solve that right now.
Money should be diverted from roads to something else. That's the fundamental issue I have.
Well, you're classifying Chapter 90 money as only for roads, and I think what Sean is raising is it's also used for capital equipment in these kinds of circumstances.
Right. That's been the case for decades, and many communities do that. But in this town, that's not what we've been doing.
Okay, well...
I don't feel
But we're sitting around the table admitting we mismanaged the Chapter 90 funds for the past 3 years. We're admitting that we poorly managed our roads and our equipment and our capital. We've all said that in our own way. We've all admitted that right now. I'm trying to make one quick change so we don't leave interest-free. No investor would leave $130,000 in the bank for 6 months interest-free and that's what we're going to do. We're going to make that choice if we don't do something.
The money's
I'm going to take a risk out of the system that's a huge liability for the town.
The money's basically committed already.
All right, so I have a motion to authorize Sean to approach advisory and capital budget and try to sell them on this. I don't have a second to that motion. Okay, so motion dies. All right, next item, meeting calendar. We already scheduled the next meeting, October 1st.
Wait, but you've left selectmen reports. There's a couple of things I wanted to...
Okay, you got more? Go ahead, Paul.
Well, first, I just want to make a comment that last 9/11 took place, and that was a major event for our nation, and thought we should at least make a passing reference to it. For many years, we had a little bit of a ceremony here in town that was quite meaningful and moving. I don't believe we had one this year, but it is worth a moment to pause and just reflect on the tragedy that happened to our nation and to the, I think it was 2,800 odd people who died that day. So that was my first thing, just to remember a little bit.
Thanks for doing that.
And the other thing I want to mention is this 40B project down on Washington Street. I have been getting a lot of feedback from a lot of people that the selectmen should be doing more to oppose it. If you recall, we had a discussion at this board level. We asked the town administrator to send a letter into the Board of Appeals indicating it was too dense and there were environmental issues and so on. The letter was like 3 sentences long, and the hearings are ongoing. There are a lot of citizens of this town who are quite concerned about the impact on this community of this development. And I would like to call upon the Board of Selectmen to do more and perhaps send a more forceful statement about the need for this project to be scaled back and become more compatible with the community and more compatible with the neighborhood.
It's not on our agenda for tonight.
I'm just raising it.
Okay, all right.
Is that possible?
Yes, in fact, we have a new administration, as you know, the Baker-Polito administration, and 3 days ago, a decision came down that threw out a 40B, like the first one in 7 years, 8 years, and it's like riveted the whole municipal bar. It's riveted the municipal world that maybe there's some sunlight in what looked like a very dark future on these 40Bs. So people in this community are crying out for help, and they're looking for the town to help them. And it's before the Board of Appeals. I just feel we, as the elected representatives of the people, that we should be responding to our constituents.
Any other selectmen reports?
I just have one in passing. I was just belabor it, spend more than 30 seconds on it, but I was really impressed with the Newsweek poll. You can always quibble with the metrics of, they surveyed 30,000 public high schools in the country to pick the top 1.5%. Dover Sherborn's the top ranked high school in the state, ranked 16th out of 30,000 schools. So schools are expensive, but you can always quibble with the metrics. The metrics tell you everything, but that's still 16 out of 30,000 is pretty nice. So kudos to the regional schools.
Hear, hear.
Okay, great. Sean, anything? No. Okay, good. And we've got no minutes.
They're applauding you over there.
That'll last.
They're applauding the end of the meeting. October 1st at 6 p.m. Sorry, is the next meeting, and we do have a warrant for a payroll warrant. Can we get a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, good.
Mike?
Yeah.
This is the one that Irene circulated this afternoon.
Yeah.
What dates in October do you want?
Do we want other meetings?
Yeah.
I don't think we've figured that out yet.
Okay.
Do people want to set another meeting at this point? We could do the 15th, I guess. That's the way it would typically be. The 15th is 2 weeks after that on a Thursday, so.
Mark, you need to go
Works
back to
for me.
Thursdays, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's do that. We got onto a cycle that Paul said he could live with, so October 15th will be the following meeting.
Okay.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning? Aye, thank you. We accomplished a lot tonight.
Thank you.